The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
CRA meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. We are going to have a moment of silence and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we need to adopt the minutes from. Okay. Well, first of all, let's have a roll call, see who's here. Thank you.
Carlson? Here. Hurtak? Here. Clendenin? Here. Maniscalco? Here. Guerra? Miranda? Here. Henderson?
Present.
We have physical quorum.
Thank you. It's on. Can you hear me? Good morning. It's okay.
Good morning.
Someone say hey?
Come on.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt the minutes and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
How you doing? Fine, thanks. How you doing?
so we're gonna call up our director, Ms. Moody, to clean up our agenda and set the tone for the meeting today. Good morning.
Good morning, Board. Good to see you. Setting the agenda, we are asking to please receive and file item number 7.
All those in favor? Second by Clendenin.
Thank you. And following, we are respectfully asking to continue items 8 through 16.
8 through 16.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay.
Thank you very much. And from the required approvals, respectfully asking to pull items 24 and 25 to be heard under my CRA Director's Report.
Second by Clendenin. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Okay. Under the Director's Report, 24, 25. Okay. And Mr. Massey, can you go over public comments for me, please?
Yes, ma'am. Members of the public are allowed a reasonable opportunity at the beginning of the CRA meeting to address any item on the agenda before the CRA takes official action on an item. A 3-minute time limit applies to all speakers providing public comment. Speakers and members of the public are reminded that they are to refrain from disruptive behavior, including making vulgar or threatening remarks or making or causing disruptive noises or sounds or displaying signs or graphics. Speakers are also reminded to refrain from launching personal attacks against city or CRA officials, staff members, or members of the public. The chair will rule out of order any person who speaks without being recognized or attempts to address the CRA from outside the speaker area at the podium. Persons failing to comply with the CRA rules may also be ruled out of order, and at the discretion of the chair may be removed from the chambers for the remainder of this day's meeting. Finally, CRA members are reminded that they should refrain from engaging a speaker under public comment.
Thank you so much. Now we will have public comment. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, CRA members. I'm Linda Salson at 157 Biscayne. I'm here to discuss West Tampa and how you can best direct your CRA staff to better protect it. As some of you know, I have worked to preserve West Tampa for many years and have just written an article for Creative Loafing called Protect West Tampa. With concerned friends, we've recently started the West Tampa Strategy Group as an effort to save its diverse heritage and distinctive character. In driving around this historic area, I see that the guidelines to West Tampa overlay have not been adhered to at all. Many of the new structures are completely out of sync with the sense of community, and it's obvious that we need to improve this. I recently attended a West Tampa CRA Advisory Committee meeting and found that the advisory committee members have actually spent 2 years writing thoughtfully detailed specific recommendations to change the overlay to make it more effective, but these recommendations have not been implemented by the staff. The city's staff, this is different staff, there's CRA staff, as you all know, and then there's the zoning staff. The zoning staff wants to wait until the overall citywide zoning changes are created and implemented in 2 or 3 years before improving the West Tampa overlay guidelines. This is not good. If we wait 2 or 3 years, West Tampa is just going to have lose its character because the property is so inexpensive that developers are buying up the traditional homes, tearing them down and putting soulless white boxes instead of allowing people to invest in the existing housing stock and creating new things that are complementary. This is why the overlay really has to be redone as quickly as possible. There's another issue, and that's not limited to this neighborhood. And again, it's the difference between which rules take precedent. If the West Tampa overlay can be improved and that can be relied upon by developers and residents, that would be the best choice. However, what's happening are design exceptions are being used too frequently as an end run around the rules, and there's no opportunity for neighborhood scrutiny and comment. My understanding is that the overlay guidelines in the city should take precedent in an area like this. Thank you very much. Oh, do I have 30 more seconds?
Yes.
Oh, good, okay. Sitting as the CRA board, you all have the power to direct your staff to move quickly to implement the design overlay recommendations developed by your CRA advisory committee and to rein in the abusive use of design exceptions to undercut your rules. Thank you very much, and I hope you all got a copy of this, and if not, I'll resend it. Thanks.
Next speaker, good morning, it's Mimi.
Good morning. My name is Maida Martinez. I live in Ybor Heights. Most of you know me as Mimi. I am the current president of Ybor Heights Neighborhood Association and Watch Group. And I'm here today to firstly thank you for supporting the restructuring of the CRA. I do believe it was the critical first step to ensuring that all CRAs are using the basic operating standards, especially for grants. So I'm very much looking forward to the grant reform presentation today. I have personally witnessed how the grants have helped homeowners. I've also witnessed how grants were sometimes intentionally developed to only serve a select few of people in the community. So I'm very much looking forward to the grant reform because sometimes the grants were leveraged in an unequal way that did not serve all of the CRA. I do recognize that grants is part of the puzzle of improving quality of life, which is a focus of the CRA. At the same time, I can't help to think that the reason why we have a CRA is because of years of the history of city planning that was intentionally or planned to keep certain neighborhoods down, which is your resolution 568, which kind of confirms that. So sometimes I think it's ironic that we even have CRAs to rescue these neighborhoods that have suffered inequality for decades. And there's a lot of pressure on the East Tampa CRA to use CRA funds to kind of solve those problems that were created by the city. And I know sometimes we get a little bit weird when we want to mix CRA money with city money, but at the end of the day, the city does need to take responsibility for the situations that they created in these neighborhoods. And I'm going to give you a good example of that. The Nebraska Avenue corridor, which most of you have heard me talk about before, either one-to-one or through an email, that has been a blighted area for decades. The city knows it. Burrell Park is a city-owned park compared to other parks in the city. You can see the disparity. The city knows that. We have nuisance properties in East Tampa that have gotten away with being a nuisance property for decades that impacts the quality of life for those families that have to live there for generations. To see those blighted buildings just fall apart, especially on Nebraska Avenue. Right now, the way the city code enforcement ordinances are designed, there's no teeth to hold these property owners accountable. We have multiple property owners that are disengaged, disinterested, and they continue to impact the quality of life for those generations that are living near those dilapidated and blighted buildings. So again, I'm looking forward to the grant reform presentation, but I know you're a CRA board today, but as a city council, we can do better, Tampa. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Bobby Creighton, Tampa, Florida. I'm also going to talk about the code today, but first I like to give credit where credit is due. I like to say I have a problem with the playbook, but not with the players. Just last night we had our local code enforcement inspector at our meeting. He was great. Mayor's Neighborhood University on the road with code. You know, I love the public engagement with that. So I just want to say I'm not pointing fingers at any individuals. I think that there's policy issues that we could solve. See that? I don't know if it's coming up on the projector. That'll come up. So compared to other cities, Tampa appears to do very little to regulate vacant and deteriorating boarded structures. I'll slide that down there. This is an important issue that seems to have been overlooked and deserves attention as it affects the safety, quality of life, character, and property values of neighborhoods, especially in low-income neighborhoods of color. This page summarizes policy gaps in Tampa's code as it relates to vacant boarded structures and how other cities have attempted to address these where Tampa has not. From what I reviewed in other codes, and I'm not an expert, I just, can Google and Control F and find words that are of interest. From what I reviewed, there are 5 overt deficiencies in Tampa's code that result in harmful impacts to neighborhoods. Tampa does not require a permit to secure plywood to a structure, despite having very specific standards for doing so. An inspection of this plywood typically only occurs after a violation has been reported. Other cities require a permit and inspection. Tampa does not require property owners to register vacant boarded structures with the city and does not require any type of plan from the property owner for maintenance or anything else, allowing properties which often become problematic and a drain to city resources. Other cities require registration and a maintenance plan of some sort. Tampa's criteria to condemn a deteriorated structure Tampa's criteria to condemn a deteriorated structure is when the cost to repair is 75% of the home's assessed value, creating a prolonged nuisance which may be expensive for new owners to repair. Other cities have a lower threshold at 50%, and I may be mistaken, but it appears Tampa also should be enforcing a lower threshold per its code. Lastly, Tampa requires plywood as the material to be used to board vacant structures. Plywood is synonymous with neglect and advertises a building's vacancy. It sends a signal of visual blight and decreases surrounding property values. Additionally, it's easy to break into. Tampa is not leading the way on this. Other cities have found much more proactive ways to solve this problem. I think there's room for growth here, and I hope that as City Council, you'll be open to discussing this issue in more detail. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you.
morning.
My name is Rick Kogler. I live right in the center of the East Tampa CRA for the last 4 years. And these observations that I'm going to share with you are just from living in many cities around the world. I believe that homeowners are the key to great cities. I think they're also the key to great neighborhoods, and great neighborhoods are the keys to great cities. And great cities like Tampa are truly a blessing for the nation. So it's important that we find ways to get more people, more homeowners into many of the derelict structures in East Tampa. Rentals do not do the hard work of homeowners, and rentals cannot do the hard work of homeowners. I think neighborhoods need to be built on homeowners. When you make this important transformation, slowly benefits nobody. And making this transformation toward home ownership mindlessly benefits nobody. I wish for you all and for all of us at Tampa that will move forward with this effort, use best practices to make it successful, use code enforcement power to succeed at transforming our neighborhoods into homeowner neighborhoods as much as possible. The supply of hopeful homeowners is endless. I don't think we need to worry about that part. But I do think we need to help. And I think the easier way to transform neighborhoods into home ownership is really, it's really to focus on the sort of programs we've seen. We've gone to ribbon cuttings around the city a number of times of families receiving enough help to become a homeowner. And I have spoken to people who manage programs like that and have told me that the success rate is phenomenal, like 1% failure. And it's simply because the couple split up and the payments were needed came from the combined income, which no longer existed. Maybe we could, I think great neighborhoods are not built on empty warehouses or empty churches or pawn shops or decaying houses. Maybe a moratorium is needed for all that sort of blight. Thank you.
Good morning, Daryl Heitch. March 21st, 1968 was 2 weeks prior to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, April 4th, 1968. I had a conversation the other day and I asked someone, what do you think that Dr. King would have done if he knew that he was going to be assassinated? What do you think that the people who were planning the assassination of Dr. King were thinking about March 21st, 1968? What were they thinking about? What was on their mind? What would Dr. King, 2 weeks prior to his assassination, would have been thinking about to prevent such an assassination? 1973, there was a movie that came out that was called The Spook That Sat by the Door. The Spook That Sat by the Door was a movie about a black guy who had made it through the training of the FBI. And he made it through this training of the FBI and he became so smart and so intelligent, he was sharper than a two-edged sword. But what he did was he went and told his field boss at that time that I want to go back to Chicago and I want to work in the field office in Chicago. He went to Chicago and he started teaching the gangs and the different criminals, in so many words, he started teaching them guerrilla warfare on how to beat the system. And these guys became brilliant at doing that. And so they were able to topple local law enforcement officers. They were able to defeat them at the different things that they were doing because they knew something that was only supposed to be known by the local law enforcement. I gotta believe that there's a spook that sat by the door. And I also believe that as we move forward with resolution number 568, that as we move forward with 568, we are 2 weeks now before that date that the staff comes back and give a report. My question is, what is the council doing to prepare for what could be a potential community assassination if we come back with the wrong decision and the wrong outcomes with this particular resolution? I'm under the belief that there's conversations that may or may not be happening to go against what may be needing to happen for the constituents of East Tampa and the city of Tampa. So I'm asking you to be mindful of what's happening. Keep your ear to the wall. Make sure that you're doing the best good for the people who actually ask you to serve us that much better. Don't allow the spook that sat by the door to influence and to upset what we're trying to do with resolution number 568. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Diane Ziegler, and I want to talk today about the plan that handles derelict properties with plywood or lack of permits, lack of any kind of time limits. For me, and in my experience, I know that owning a property takes responsibility. It takes effort. It takes a lot of responsibility. I believe the city needs to encourage policies to beef up property owners being held responsible for their property. And as I was biking over here today, I was thinking, not just now, what we see today, what's here now, but also thinking ahead. And there's gonna be a lot of tough decisions ahead for the city. And we're gonna have sea level rise. We're gonna have a lot of neighborhoods changing. I mean, in a simple example today are some of the parking lots that are causing a lot of grief. And there's no structures there. Those parking lots are based on air. And that can cause a lot of grief, you know, how to handle that, how to manage that. So again, what happens in the future for properties that are not currently vacated, but there's gonna be a lot more to consider and a lot to think about. I think it would be really good for the city to plan ahead on how they're gonna handle damaged properties. What will be the time limits, what will be the permitting, what will be the ordinances enforced, and this is a tough job. So that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. Mentesnat means anything's possible. Like I said, huru. Huru means freedom in Swahili. I want to say, whatsoever this city council talks about, act upon, engage the community with, engage the business community with, has absolutely, positively nothing to do with African people locally, regionally, nationally, or internationally. African people, we've been subjugated for 624 years, dispossessed for 624 years, underdeveloped, intentionally underdeveloped for 624 years, de-educated for 624 years. How do you take African people who built pyramids and then tell them that the first African person graduated from some school in 1898 or 1921? That's a lot of de-education. It's a lot of things African people don't know. I've got a brother and I got a son. And anytime, no matter where we are, no matter what you're doing, we can be at a funeral, you can be at a family function. Those two get off together and they talk auto mechanics. Mysteriously, that's their passion. They talk auto mechanics. So it's gonna always be somebody in the room who's gonna, articulation is gonna be somewhat different from everybody else in the room. And stereotypically, when white people see African people, they looking at a beggar right in front of their face. They think black people always beg, and they think we came from a race or a group or something, a lineage of beggars. And that's not the case. So I want to drop some knowledge right here, right now, today, that people should know and understand, irrespective of where it goes. African people need to understand it's no such thing as a white Christian. It's no such thing as a white Jew. It's no such thing as a white Muslim. It's no such thing as a white Hindu or Buddhist. The only such thing you would see in white religion or white theology is L. Ron Hubbard Scientology. So we as African people have to stop letting people make us feel as we're subhuman, and we have to stand up against that. And this city council need to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. My name is Black Rose. I have been watching the Summer Youth Employment Program since its infancy, and I'm disappointed to see that it's...
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Black Rose.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
And I'm disappointed to see that it's still as stagnant now as it was then. I spoke with my representative about the program and was basically told it's failing because it's not properly funded, because the funds are coming from the wrong fund set. According to Title 11, Chapter 163, Section 340, Number 9, community redevelopment or redevelopment means undertakings, activities, or projects of a county, municipality, or community redevelopment agency in a community redevelopment area for the elimination and prevention of the development or spread of slums and blight, for the reduction or prevention of crime, or for the provision of affordable housing, whether for rent or for sale, to residents of low or moderate income, including the elderly, and may include slum clearance and redevelopment in community redevelopment area or rehabilitation and revitalization of coastal resort and tourist areas that are deteriorating and economically distressed, or rehabilitation or conservation in the community redevelopment area or any combination thereof in accordance with the community redevelopment plan, and may include the preparation of such a plan. But I'd like to repeat, for the reduction or prevention of crime. Now, my question is, why is this even a question? When we know exactly that this program falls under that definition. We already know keeping youth busy, employed, and obtaining gainful skills, among other things, leads to reduction in juvenile crime. That's exactly why, and yet I've witnessed this program caring so little about the city, that about these youths, that the flyers were incorrect for weeks. Still, the site link doesn't go directly to the job application, and the city has done zero outreach. It's obvious that the city doesn't care, as evidenced by putting off the debrief about last year's program for almost a year. Someone needs to explain how this is acceptable. What are y'all doing to get these youth involved? You're not going to the schools, making commercials, creating more attractive flyers, or literally doing anything to make it seem like you actually want the youth to see this opportunity. Even the county is doing better in this area. So I don't know about you, but it sounds to me like y'all want this program to fail and just say we didn't want it bad enough.
Good morning.
Good morning, Allison Hewitt, East Tampa resident and business owner. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you today. I am looking forward to hearing items 4, 5, and 6, especially about the grant program. One of the challenges that I have had in working with businesses, small businesses in East Tampa, is that the grants are reimbursable. And so unless these businesses had money, they could not take advantage of the grants because it was reimbursable. They had to do the work to be paid. So I'm pleased that they have in here an award letter because like the Center for Economic Development has worked with one of our major community partners, the Suncoast Schools Federal Credit Union, and so they are open to take an award letter to create a line of credit with the business to then be able to access these grants. And so if the award letter is written appropriately for the bank, they're willing to give a line of credit. How that helps too, some of these businesses are old-fashioned businesses and they still keep their money in a box at the house. This also would help them be able to create banking relationships to be able to grow their businesses and be able to hire locally, therefore increasing wages and also impacting the housing because people will be able to afford better affordable housing. I had a question about the RFP for over $1 million. So does that mean if a property owner applies for a $1 million grant, $1 million plus, that their request then turns into a RFP, but what if they have been working with a organization or a development group? So does the RFP then be the staff chooses someone for that property owner to work with? I want to be able to clarify that if someone comes for an application, does that RFP then mean they have to work with someone else? The other part too I want to be able to ask is as this is passed and move forward, that the staff is proactive and take a look at the areas that have a significant code enforcement violations to go talk to them about the grant. And so rather than maybe having one business in a long line of businesses, let's talk to all 3 or 4 that are right there. They can take advantage of it. And then primarily East Tampa, because that's where I live, can see some major changes there. So rather than having someone the staff wait for someone to come in and give an application. Maybe they look at where the major code enforcement violations are, or where most of the slum and blight is, and then go out and reach out to them to give them an opportunity to have a whole development or different property owners that's in one area. So I'm hoping that the staff would consider putting that in their recommendations. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Connie Burton. In honor of Women History Month, I would like to pay honor to the women that work in the field of advocacy. Sometimes don't come with a paycheck, come with a lot of awful, nasty criticism, especially when they're advocating for the vulnerable. And sometimes that criticism comes from people that should be on the right side of history, but chooses to align themselves up, what I describe to be offenders of the Black community. It's awful. And history is recording those that find themselves in alignment with those activities and those persons, that there should be a deep examination of where you want to end and align yourself up with. I want to give honor to and support to our local NAACP president, Yvette Lewis. You know why? Because every Saturday she finds herself be under the gun of fire, coming from members of this council that support that rhetoric. In the agenda today, a motion for continuance, item number 10, item number 11. I don't know how much more continuance we can have. We've been talking about a summer youth job program that would elevate our young people from perhaps juvenile delinquency into prosperity. We understood as a CRA that this was something that the city should not handle on their own, out of their budget. So you know what the East Tampa CRA did? The same way they did with the skills center, they came up with their own budget to hire their own coordinator so we can make sure that our children would not find themselves having an ongoing criminalization history, but then would find themselves doing something positive. We can't get out the starting gate. You know why? Because of direct interference for people that don't want to see this process moving forward. We said not 36 children, we said 72. If you ask people now how many children we got, it ain't even 50. Why? I could find 72 children all by myself. We would like to see a successful program. We're hoping that when the director come up this morning and talk about her report, all roads lead to the improvement of the quality of life for people in East Tampa. $24 million sitting in the bucket, and the only expenditures that I see is city staff budgets.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Valerie Bullock. I'm from Ponce Leon and Belmont Heights. I want to talk about the item number 10 and 11 on the agenda, and I'm against us joining our money with other CRAs because of the distrust. In the past, everybody said they're going to do this and they're going to do that. But if you look at the quality of life in Belmont Heights and Ponce de Leon, the little girls are going through the same thing I went through 60 years ago. The boys are doing the same thing their dad and grandfather did. No funding, no organization, no people is coming down doing community engagement with those people to see what it is they want or what it is they need to change their quality of life. Nothing changed. So whatever we're doing, it's not working, and I hope you all are genuinely open to trying something new. If I'm just coming down here and you all know you're not gonna change it, you know you're gonna keep y'all foot on our neck, just say it. Because when you say one thing and you do another thing, what am I to believe? It get really, really confusing. And I love the people in my neighborhood. Like I say, I've been over there 61 years, and we have a lot of new people coming in. They say the neighborhood need to be like this, it need to be like that. Quite frankly, I'm tired of suffering to make it comfortable for the new people that's coming in the neighborhood. It's getting real, real old. The city of Tampa has repeatedly talked about changing the broken system. The system was designed to keep certain people from living the American dream. Now that we acknowledge this has been happening, where do we go from here? We got resolution 568, nothing happened. The children still had to eat oodles and noodles last night. This has played a major part in the struggles for those of us living in predominantly low-income areas. We're not given second chances. The old police chief had a battery on a Leo, yet her past was forgiven. The young men from my neighborhood have a drug charge, and now their life is a living hell. They can't get a basic entry level position because they have a felony charge. There are numerous barriers that's stopping us from getting employed. The barriers must be removed. What does my credit history have to do with me working for the city of Tampa as a laborer? Nothing. That's a barrier put in place to keep certain people out. We have a duty to help the people who we hurt get gainful employment by making the playing field equal for all. Everyone is not going to get a college degree or a high school diploma. There need to be trade schools and apprenticeship programs where these young people can get an entry-level position that leads to a career. There are no vocational training where we would be able to learn a skill that pay a living wage.
15 seconds, Ms. Valerie.
It's traumatizing to watch a new house get built in your neighborhood. You can't work to build a house. You can't even afford the house.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Pastor William, 1112 East Scott Street. I thank God for that young lady spoke like she did. You need to reward her. But I got some questions to ask, and I know y'all not gonna keep me up here that long. Give me 3 seconds, but I got some questions. One of my questions is, when the government talk about shutdown, what they mean? What they talking about? Can't none of y'all answer. I'm glad you can't. Because what we need a new government. Need to elect people like me. People like that young lady that stood up here just a while ago, and other black folks. Because we doing things that not spiritual, not as a human. We treat a dog better than you treat me. But you know what? My day is coming, and your day is coming too. None of y'all tell me what they mean about it, government shutdown. It'd be good if they do shut down. That way we can organize new government. Isn't that right? And that'll be a good thing for a lot of people. I heard the governor saying this morning that he passed a law where black folks can't, not where I say black folks, can't sleep in the park or on a bench or nothing like that on the bus depot or whatever. But where they going? Where they gonna sleep out there in Hillsborough, Gulf? And we know we got a lot of black folks got family and don't have nowhere to stay. You all don't try to make it no better. See, y'all sitting down on your butts and getting a paycheck. We don't get no paycheck. We got to sleep where we best can sleep, regardless of whether you like it or not. But all we ask y'all to do, treat us like human beings. We ain't asking y'all for nothing else. Treat us like human beings. They building those high rises over there in New Jersey Parkway. If they building them for black folks, that's who come out of there, black folks. I don't think they're gonna let nobody, they jack the prices up so high, they don't want no black folks to even walk on the sidewalk over there. But we got to understand, like I tell y'all, and y'all gonna shut down, the government gonna shut down, go ahead shut down, and give me those $100 billion, and I'll open up a new government. And y'all be doing us a favor. You ain't doing nothing for help us no kind of way.
Thank you, Pastor Williams.
Huh?
Your time is up, Mr.
Yeah,
Williams.
yeah, I heard you, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all you can say. But
Good
you need to talk to these people up there on the board.
Okay.
And tell them they need to start doing something to help black folks be regulated and treated like a human being. And then ring the bell on them.
Good morning, Ms. Robin.
Good morning, Robin Lockett. I wasn't going to speak, but I am going to speak. I am speaking. Item number 10, the youth program. I'm still trying to figure out, I would love to know why it's still being continued, right? If the money is there, what's the delay in it? Looking at the agenda, it was originated back in 2022. That's when the original motion happened. We're in 2024 now. I'm just, it's just not connecting. So if the community is coming and saying, hey, we want this program, the money is there, I don't know, I'm confused. So I think it's very important that when we talk about what the youths are not doing, or with them getting in trouble, this is just an added arm to help them, right? So if the CRA has the money, East Tampa CRA has put the money in place for this to happen, what's the delay? I remember back in the day, the summer programs, people worked at the city. Those were good jobs, fun jobs that you worked inside. It wasn't just kids picking up paper. So the opportunity for internships, because a lot of times, those working those summer jobs, the kids end up going to that agency and working, for a lifetime. My sister did that. She worked for the police department, and now she's been with the police department for years. So I'm not sure what's the recreation of it, because we've already done it. The roadmap is already there. So I don't understand what the holdup is with it. So I would hope that this is rectified. If the CRA has voted on it, made it available, say they wanted this amount of kids to have this opportunity, the roadmap is already done on it, why the delay? Or why is it not happening? So I support this. I think anything to keep the kids off the street, outside of being in a park playing, and to give them some job skills and so forth, outside of just picking up paper. The question needs to be asked, what's the delay? So thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Darlene, make sure that you have the contact information for everybody who spoke on that particular item for me, please. Board Member Carlson.
We just continued those items a little while ago, and several people showed up to speak to them. Could we just ask Director Moody to get up and explain?
She will address it.
Because you do it while folks are here.
Sure, in her staff report.
I think it would.
Well, she's
people
next,
usually
so
do.
she's almost next. If they want to stick around and hear her report, we can give some explanation as to why it's continued to the month of April.
I make a motion to ask that Director Moody answer the question about.
Okay, Board, Director Moody, please come forward.
Good morning, everyone.
Second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. I have no problem coming up and speaking on it. For those who know, I was an educator. Youth education is my passion, and these types of programs running out of nonprofits. So I share, the value of this program, and it is happening this summer. We actually met yesterday with Mr. McCrae, went over the entire curriculum, and it keeps getting better and better after every year. There's a couple reasons why it's been continued. There's two motions, item 10 and 11. One is an update on the youth program, which we are prepared to speak to. The second one is looking at the feasibility of potentially transferring this program under neighborhood enhancement and workforce development under Administrator Nguyen. So we're just having those items carried together so we can speak on it in totality. We also have a packed agenda today, so we're just trying to manage our meetings so we're not keeping you here until the 5 o'clock bell and turning around for an evening workshop. I'm happy to speak with anyone that has any concerns or wants to know what's going on with the youth program, but we're really excited to bring that update. So we've just been carrying those items together. But the summer youth program will be happening this summer. We have, the job applications are available online, and we have about 53 kids who have already applied. So we're looking for a packed summer program this year.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yes, of course, thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to speak on it as well because I actually made the motion, one of my first meetings, it's seconded by Board Member Miranda. The public came forward and spoke about it, and one of the terminologies that was used in addressing the summer youth program was the matter that the workers were called slaves because they pick up trash, and that they should be given better opportunities. And so I had to dive into that a little bit more. CRA is to address slum and blight, so when you're connecting those funds to CRA dollars, you have to address slum and blight. Thus, that's why they're picking up trash. So yes, it is a summer youth employment program, but we have summer youth employment programs. And you have to trust the city when it falls under the umbrella of summer youth employment programs. That will provide East Tampa with an opportunity, should the board decide so, to improve the quality of the program where it goes beyond just addressing slum and blight and giving them some workforce development skills, the field trips that they went on. It was an amazing program. I attended their end of the year celebration with the mayor, and it is a wonderful program, but one of the key elements is slum and blight. And so the kids are picking up trash. Are there better opportunities for East Tampa students to address other career paths? Absolutely. So us working to develop something that serves our youth in a better capacity, including the youth of East Tampa, is important. And I also prefaced that conversation many months ago by saying that myself, Darlene Johnson, my legislative aide, we were custodians in the Summer Youth Employment Program, and now we sit before you today as city employees serving the city of Tampa. There's nothing wrong with it, but to enhance the quality of the program, there are some opportunities for it to come up under the CRA and to be addressed as Summer Youth Employment Program provides for better services. And I also want to indicate that that decision was unanimous by this board. So thank you so much. Okay, so let's go on to our staff meetings.
Good morning.
Good
Sierra
morning.
Board. How are you? Today on your agenda, you have the Ybor.
State your name for the agenda.
Sorry, Brenda Thrower. I am the interim Ybor City CRA manager, and I am happy to report that today you're going to be hearing a update from what's happening in Ybor City, and we have our chair. His name is Rich Simmons, who is going to provide that report. Rich?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll hand it over.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, board members. My name is Rich Simmons. I'm the current chair of the Ybor City CAC, newly rebranded, as we know, with the CRA boards separating. I'm excited to be here today to talk about Ybor City and everything that's happening down there. But there's also some, items of concern. So I think it's, something that we should mention and discuss so that we can all make Ybor City a better place for everyone. Some recent events that happened in Ybor City within the last couple months. Fiesta Day, we had a great weather, well-attended event. I'm sure some of you were there. We had the night parade a couple Saturday nights ago. That was a great turnout, no incidents, so I think TPD is always doing an excellent job down there. A couple Sundays ago, I was down there for the end of beer week and also the Indy Flea Market. at 1920 East 7th Avenue, which is the old Frankie's Patio, which is currently being renovated. That was an absolutely electric environment. There was a lot of people around there. The street was packed. They closed down two blocks, let people walk on the street during the day, so that was a really nice event. A couple nights before that, I attended an event at the 1920 for Kairos Exchange. We had Manny Lado, Daryl Shaw, Ned Pope talked about Art House, Rich McIntyre with his investment in Ybor City, moving his law office from downtown down into the Chancey building. So there's lots of good things happening. New businesses are opening there. I think some of the concern is some of the existing buildings are closing down. I think market conditions change a lot of times. Some new businesses in the area, Cheeseology, Rosenheim, Blind Tiger moved to a new location a block away. J.C. Newman opened their cigar factory, Cigar Workers Park over on Columbus on North 15th. Well attended. There was a ribbon cutting there. The pickleball courts opened up on 2nd Avenue down there, so I think everyone's pretty excited about that. And you can continue to see the development of the Gasworks project. Anytime you drive through, downtown going to Ybor, you can see the construction that's happening on the west side of the district. And, not only the buildings that are coming up out of the ground, but also the site prep that's happening for some of the more southern blocks. So things are continuing to happen there. As I mentioned, some of the concerns in the areas are some businesses are closing. Zydeco is one that was there about 5 years and that recently closed. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. But we hear from our board members and the public that they're concerned with rising costs, costs of rent, costs of property, just increased costs all the way around. So this is something that I think is not distinct or unique to Ybor City, but it's something that's happening throughout the city and the country. We're trying to listen to that and see what we can do, make recommendations from the CAC to the CRA board, see if there's anything that we can do there. And of course, safety and security is a major component of Ybor City. Some of the events that I just mentioned, really Ybor City is an open door. Everyone's welcome to come down there and walk the streets, and we want everyone to feel safe and secure. And there's a number of programs that we all are responsible for that provides that. So a couple things. I wanted to talk briefly about the CAC and YCDC Inc. That separated about 6 months ago. YCDC is currently going through a rebranding effort. I think a couple items came in front of you before. We talked about the Ybor City logo and how that's going to get used in the future with some licensing agreements. So, Mr. Massey, thank you for all your hard work on that. So YCDC Inc. is updating our bylaws, our mission statement, developing a vision plan, and really, a couple different ideas are being tossed around, but we want to represent the greater Ybor area, not necessarily set CRA boundaries that we're tied to as a CRA or a CAC. We want to focus on marketing and branding, advocacy, safety and security, economic development, arts, and historic preservation. Seem to be the major bullet points that we're addressing. We're in the process. I think the city provided on March 8th, a download of all documents and digital files from the city to the CAC. We haven't physically exchanged the files yet. They're right here. I touched them earlier, so that's going to happen today. That the lease at 2015 East 7th Avenue will be expiring at the end of April, so we're continuing to move that. I think city staff is moving around as well. And since we don't have that office space, we've moved our CAC meetings to the ECC, the Entrepreneur Collaborative Center on Palm and 21st, 22nd. So that meeting space has been working out very well. And, hopefully we might see some of you in the next Monday and the following week too, where we're doing new CAC member training. So a lot of things have changed with the way that the CRA and the CACs work together. So I think that's going to be a nice little update for existing board members as well as new board members to get oriented to how things have changed and how we can all work together to achieve our goals. So a couple things I want to touch on with quality of life and community policing. The Ybor City Yes team, they've been on the job for about 18 months now, block by block, I cannot sing enough praises for the efforts that they've done. As you know, the YES team has kind of been combined, and we used to have docents and the clean team to take care of things. We've kind of combined those, so now everything's really focused on hospitality, making sure that visitors, workers, residents are able to find where they're going. The YES team and Jason Stewart, I'll mention him. He has a great customer-focused clean team program, and they're fostering good relationships with the businesses, residents, TPD, and also the city departments. They focus on landscaping and cleaning. They always greet pedestrians and help with wayfinding, general help and support within the district. They work with TPD to be an extra set of eyes and ears. They have a highly visible presence. I'm sure you've all seen them with their bright yellow shirts and always a friendly face. And they have some flexibility in their schedule to work with events that are scheduled within Ybor City to provide support that's needed for that. They provide monthly reports. I'm sure you've seen them in some of your packets with a breakdown of stats. All their employees have radios and have GPS coordinates on them, so all the stats are live, and then they summarize them monthly for the CAC board, and then they make their way up to you. Some recent events, a success story there. There's an uptick in graffiti in the area. There was some resident involvement of this activity. They worked with the clean team and TPD to find this individual and make an arrest in that. So, but graffiti is definitely on an uptick right now within the district. So I think it's nice to see extra eyes and ears on, probably more eyes with graffiti than ears. But we all work together to try to make our Ybor City a better place. Tampa Police Department, Captain Nag College reports to the CAC every month regarding safety issues. He also talks to the community policing officer, Jimmy Wilcher, often reports as well, and I think his shift changed around a little bit, so I think we have two community liaison officers, but they've kind of overlapped their shifts a lot better instead of having him be the straight 9 to 5 people shift. So that allows better access all the way around in the district. And really, working with the YES team and TPD, we're really big on community policing, different aspects of that. We had that incident October of last year on Halloween, and TPD has really stepped up their game to provide additional support and in the district, as well as the residents. So I think they're all realizing that this is their home, this is their urban village, and we all need to protect the historic district. We also work with code enforcement. Director O'Connell, as well as Mike Peterson and Renee Lopez, usually attend our meetings to provide updates. Code enforcement, expressed some concerns in the past about not being able to go out at night. They have limited hours, and I think they also felt for their safety. So we combined like a joint task force with TPD and code enforcement to go out at certain hours to work together, walk the streets, so that they can survey the parking lots. There's been a number of citations issued. So there's a little bit more enforcement on the parking lots right now, so I think that's progressing through the system. I think it goes through a magistrate, and then there's some other, just civil fines and things like that. So one of the things that's been pretty consistent from the CAC to code enforcement is making their reports a little more user-friendly, to be able to extract the data. I think sometimes we just get a download of addresses and is it a code infringement when it's closed and a file number, but there's really not that much difference. So I think a couple of the board members are taking a more active role in working with Renee and Mike Peterson to potentially work with the IT department to make the reports more user-friendly. Maybe if it's something more similar to what TPD provides, with a summary of things and then an address and how things are moving through the system. So that's something that Fran is really adamant about, getting these reports more readable. Because of our community policing effort, we're also looking at any options that may be available to make the district safer and better. We've recently had a conversation with Ken Stapleton with KSA. He develops community safety action plans. He works primarily in Florida and Ohio. He's got 30-something years of experience, And we had an introductory conversation with him and just get better understanding of what they would do. And this is something that they would work with TPD as well as the CAC and the CRA board to potentially develop a comprehensive plan for how we want to integrate community policing, different efforts. A couple of takeaways from that. They develop a 5-point plan, so they focus on the built environment. They also look at different programs. They work on patrols, communications, and metrics. And this is something that we'd be looking at not only for CRA districts, but also the greater Ybor City area. One of the interesting aspects of this is when you talk to him, he made a point that we look at safety from the vantage point of a woman coming into a new place, maybe at night. Unfamiliarity with the environment, are they able to wayfind their way safely and not feel threatened or insecure, or relatively, they want to have a safe feeling. So I think he's got some interesting ideas there that could be implemented. I'm not sure what that, if that's something that we're interested in, but I think it's an interesting way to maybe develop a plan and see if that could help augment the safety and community policing in the area. They would do a preliminary study, develop a plan, and then implement the plan. I want to talk a little bit about CRA funds and affordable housing. I know you've, both as council and CRA board, have heard much discussion of how to spend affordable housing dollars. We allocated 30% of the budget from Ybor 1 and 2, as well as all the CRAs here in the city, to affordable housing. When we were still with YCDC, we made a motion because we didn't necessarily agree with the 30% being taken from the budget for that without a definable plan in place. And I think that's how we worded that motion. We need to kind of understand what the plan is to help with affordable housing. CRA 1 and 2 are very small districts. Since they are TIF funds, they'll have to be spent in those CRAs. And having affordable housing in those areas is complex. It's a challenge. There's not a lot of opportunity there. So I think the concern with the CAC continues to be how we potentially spend that money to be able to affect some change for affordable housing in the area. And some options that may be considered is, maybe integrate this with the arts and have residency for the artist. And I think there's a couple potential options out there. So I think it's got some real good benefits that would need further development. So I think we're kind of excited about exploring that and seeing if there's any opportunities there. Some new capital projects that are coming up pretty soon. Breaking the 7th Avenue. So I think this project's in the queue. It's coming up, but there's a 2-block area that we're going to start with. 15th to 17th. Brenda will probably provide an update, or Eric will provide an update soon on what the progress is with that. But I think everyone on the CAC is excited to see that happen. Those are the primary blocks of 7th Avenue, and I think that would do a number of things. I mean, obviously the aesthetic benefits of breaking 7th Avenue, our historic 7th Avenue, and also being able to calm traffic a little bit. I think some of the concerns with cruising 7th Avenue, maybe with the bricking that slows them down a little bit and makes it a little bit less smooth, and maybe that'll help with the traffic on 7th. We're going to get an update next week at our CIC meeting on the Ybor South pipe drainage and flood mitigation study. We hired a consultant, Stantec, who will present the results of their study on Tuesday. This is in the south of Central Ybor, 16th Avenue, 16th Street, 17th Street, anywhere from 6th to 5th to 4th in that area. There's a drainage basin in there, and it floods. About 2 years ago, there was enough flooding in that area from the water that came from the north to actually pop the manhole covers up, and they were floating on top of the water. So there's a lot of water pressure in there. So we're excited. I think the residents in that area are excited to see what the results of that study will be. Your CRA Districts 1 and 2 community redevelopment plans are being updated, and we're continuing to work with the planning department of what that scope would be. And we're also excited to start a new design process, design build, for Centennial Park. I think that, we kind of went down a path with a designer before. The cost became a little bit too much. So that's in contracts right now. So we're excited to see that Centennial Park being reimagined. One item that we completed last year was the Ybor City Resident and Worker Survey. There'll be hard copies presented to you for your perusal. This is our 4th iteration of the Worker and Resident Survey. It started in 2016. It was completed last summer in 2023. There are 4 main focus areas: community activation, retail development, parking and transportation, and safety and security. These results from these worker and resident surveys are used to help guide CRA projects and programs, budget priorities, as well as private sector investments. We have Jack Smith from HCP Associates here to address that report in more detail if need be, but I'll provide a general overview at this time of some of the results that I found interesting. We had about 555 responses to the survey, 285 residents, and 270 workers. One thing that we've kind of talked about at the CAC, we've captured the residents and the workers, but not necessarily the visitors. So I think if on the next iteration of that survey, I think it'd be good to capture the viewpoint from a visitor, maybe first time or repeat visitor to Ybor City, see what their impressions are of the district, how can we make it better, make it more inviting. Again, Ybor City is open, we want people to come down there, eat at our restaurants, have fun. It's an inviting, it's an inviting area. It's our National Historic District. I think we're all very proud of that, and we want to bring people down to Ybor. So some general observations. Generally, residents and workers are aligned with general perceptions of safety and security concerns. That's ongoing. Workers, I think they tend to be more commuters, park in the parking garages or on the streets and parking lots, walk to their offices. There's some security concerns there with the walking, as well as for the residents, some of the cleanliness and just general safety concerns of what happens in the district. For community activation, I think the residents would like to see more walking trails and parks. Not as important for the workers, but I think green space in Ybor City is always a welcome addition in any urban environment. Some retail needs, residents, they tend to leave the district to find some retail options, grocery, dry cleaning, gym. None of that exists in the district. We're making progress with that. There's 2 grocery stores now, a lot closer. Streetcar provides easy transportation there, but I think the residents still feel that they need their own. We understand the metrics behind that and how many beds you need to have make that happen, but I think everyone's hopeful that we're getting there, pretty soon. Streetcar use, that's up. I mean, you guys see the ridership, that's doing great. I don't think too many workers use that as a means to commute, but with the residents and visitors, the streetcar's packed all the time. So, I mean, that's a great amenity to the area. It's doing great. A couple things with workers and having concern with safe parking options. We talked a little bit about the walking from the garages to their offices. Some feel, not so safe in those things. There's concern with having safe parking options. And some of that perception that kind of downticked a little bit with the workers. And it seems like also employers used to provide paid parking down there, and it seems like that benefit is kind of being lost. So that might lead to some of the dissatisfaction of the workers with the parking situation down there. And then safety and security, both groups continue to cite concerns with real and perceived safety and cleanliness. The YES team's doing a great job with that and combating those efforts. It's always a welcoming environment having them on the streets and doing what they can to help maintain that, make sure that experience in Ybor City is genuine. Ybor City is continuing to be a representative area of Tampa. We're all working to improve the quality of life in that area. And we'll address the safety. We'll continue to grow and make sure that we preserve Ybor City for all to enjoy in the area. And I can take any questions if you like, or we could turn it over to Jack if you have
Board
additional
Member
questions.
Miranda, Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Simmons.
Put your mic.
Your information is certainly well said and well represented. I go back into Ybor City and I look at different eras, 1940 to 1960, then I go 61 to 80, then I go 1990 to 2010, then I go to 2011, 2020, 2021 to present. And everything you say is factual. Ybor City is always a revolving door about something. And what you miss, I mean, what I believe that you look around as why it changed for various reasons. First, you had a great streetcar system throughout the city, 50-some miles of it, that was taken, the rails were taken off somewhere in mid-50s and the early 60s. The train stopped in the early 50s, the rails were removed in the early 60s. You had cigar factories, you had American Can, you had Continental Can, you had Reynolds Aluminum that employed 20,000 people just between those. Why did they leave? Why did the people leave? It wasn't solely the expressway. It was education and economics. The people that lived there used to work there. They had a little bag, they went to work, they ate there, they finished at 2:30, 3 o'clock, they went home. They walked home. There was hardly any cars. All that being said, before Medicare, we had it in Ybor City called Mutual Aid Society, La Benefica, Gonzalez Clinic, Trey's Clinic, where the doctors would come to your house. Where if you needed some operation, you go to the hospital. Where you had x-rays in the hospital. Where they gave you a prescription, it was at the hospital. You didn't have what we have now. It's a different era. Why did they leave? The youth left, and it started to collapse because they got better educated, they wanted a nicer place to live. Most of the homes in Ybor City were made out of wood and small. They had no heat, they had no air conditioning, they had windows that went up and down, and they had a porch. Why is it you don't see any porches anymore? Air conditioning, you don't want to see the outside neighbors, the neighbors don't speak to each other. Everyone in Ybor City knew each other. If you committed a crime, they find you right away. The neighbors would point you out. They didn't want that in their neighborhood. So what I'm saying is, everything that you say happened because of certain things. People moved out of Ybor City, the youth, to go to West Tampa, to Pat Acres, and to the county. Brandon was just a little blinking light. It was yellow. It wasn't even red. You could drive right through. Now you see blinking lights in front of you, like 10,000, because the traffic is stalled and you can't move. So these are the things that prosperity has brought. It changed again when it was under the Greco administration, where they made enormous investments in it, and things started to change. The artist is the one that brought it back to a degree, and then what happened, you mentioned it, the rent started to go up, and they couldn't afford it, and the bars moved in. And there's where we're at now. However, the evolution of Ybor City is still changing. It's becoming what it used to be in a slower area, residential. However, I don't realize, or I don't really know the numbers of how many young people are living there that are child-producing age. That's the only thing that can save it. If the young people are the ones that are between 35 down to 20 or whatever, that are child-producing age, that's the only thing that can save it as a residential district. If not, it will keep revolving until time ends. Even you looked at it, we blame a lot of things. Downtown in Ybor City were connected without having connectivity because you could walk back and forth or take the streetcar. So you had a lot of things going. The neighborhood, everybody was healthy because nobody had too much money, so you had to walk. You had the Casino Theater, you had the Ritz Theater, and you had different venues. Like I said earlier, you got the Italian Club, the Cuban Club, Centro Turiano, Centro Español, all what? Different nationalities with the same thing in focus, and different people in different countries come together to make it better. They worked very hard, all of us, and included all races, not just one. And these are the things. However, that changed when Britton Plaza opened up and Northgate opened up. And the people said, oh, we want to go to a new mall. We still had a walk, but it was a big parking spot right in front of each one of them. That made it more convenient. What happened then? West Shore Mall opened up. What happened in Northgate and Britton Plaza? Demise again. So everything has a reason and a value. And I'm looking at Ybor City, and I'm pleasantly pleased that it's making a change for residential units. Without residential units and people living there, you don't have the roots in the ground. You just have the grass to cut. And there's a vast difference in all that kind of stuff. And what you're saying is absolutely true. The area is unbelievably center located, everything you want. You're 5 minutes, 10 minutes away from anything you need. And they say the expressway killed it. Maybe it killed it to some degree, but the young people moved out. And you're looking at one of them. So all these things that I realized, if it wasn't for HEC and the Sheriff Department, you may not have it, Ybor City today, because they went there where no one dared to go there. And credit goes, kudos to them for doing what they did at that time. And I see the senator back there, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about, because him and I lived in the same area for a long period of time, and we were considered one area. It wasn't Ybor City alone, it was all of that area around that were like family. Somebody got hurt, everybody felt the pain. Somebody didn't have a job, everybody went to contribute something to make sure that family ate. You don't even know who your neighbor is nowadays. Half of us don't even care. Because of modern society, you're isolated in your convenience. And you don't know what's outside. That's the problem we have in society. Nobody knows, not that they don't care, they don't know what the problems are. They're soundproof, air conditioned. However, saying all that, I'm a dreamer. I dream a lot. Some come true, some don't. And I'll give you an example. Why do we keep building houses where hurricanes can blow them away? Go to islands that have much more hurricanes than we do, their houses don't blow away. Because the roof and everything else made of solid concrete with rebar wire in them, and there's nothing to grab to move up. Flat roof rolling down. I don't know why we continue to do that, but that's a fact. We do things because we think it's the greatest. If you look around, it's not the greatest because they keep tearing down. Your insurance rates are terrifically high for a reason. And a lot of it is because sometimes, not for the right causes, let me just say that. But your report is right on target, and I want to commend you and your staff and everyone in Ybor City for making it what it is and continue to help it improve. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. I appreciated your report and I appreciated this report, but one of the things that stood out to me is how you talked about not knowing what to do with the 30% of affordable housing money that this board has decided that that's what's going to be the case. So in this study, there's no section about housing. There are no questions about housing. So to me, that would have been a perfect spot for the CAC to figure out what to do with that required 30%. So I'm a little disappointed that that wasn't included, and I hope that in the future it is, because very clearly when I look at this data, the expectation gaps, one of the biggest gaps, one of the biggest problems is people are asking for affordable housing options, quality housing options. So it's here, we're hearing it. But that doesn't seem like it was a question that was asked about workers, if they want to really live in the area. There's a question later that says, you know, are you interested in living? But it doesn't say, you know, how can we get you to do that? So I think that that's a perfect spot for you all to engage with some of the workers and maybe residents to help figure out that affordable housing piece that we also desperately need. It looks in the recommending Ybor City, how interested are workers in living in Ybor City within the next 5 years? In 2016, it was 29%. Last year, it was 40%. So you really do have a lot of space to work with to look at affordable housing. And considering the development that's going on, there is a lot of room for affordable housing in Ybor. So thank you.
Board Member Clendenin, Board Member Carlson.
Good morning. One, outstanding. I mean, really, really a good report. And the fact that this is, I think you said this is the fourth iteration of this. So often when I look at government surveys and all, they all have a political agenda. They're trying to promote something. They're trying to manipulate opinion or something. This is actually, I think, pretty much what you see is what you get type of survey, an assessment of how people feel about the area that you've surveyed. on some very critical issues. So I think this was honestly, I think it's a tremendous effort on you all. Anybody that was involved in this, kudos to you. Really good job. I'm really, of course, I'm passionate about the streetcar and streetcar expansion. I'm really excited to see that you found that nearly 50% of the residents of Ybor City are riding the streetcar. And I think that's an omen for things to come as we expand affordable transportation options. You know, we can get away from the part of the problem was parking, right? So if people are using affordable transportation options, we won't have to worry about expensive parking. We won't have to worry about some of these traffic problems and stuff that you've highlighted in this survey. So that's really exciting. The 30%, I think Councilman Hertzek and I kind of disagree on this a little bit on how this looks. And I wasn't on council when they did 30% because I think I'm more closer to where you are. And I've stated this from the dais before. I'm not a fan of allocating a set percentage of money to a government agency. That's how we get the $500 hammers. You know, I would rather have specific projects brought before us and fund specific projects so we know what we're getting for it and what the return on that investment is. I would love to have, you know, if there's an affordable housing project or something that is very specific, come before us as a CRA to be able to fund, and then we can find that money. We can know that how much it costs, what the subsidy is per unit. As we have now repeated multiple times, we had a developer come and ask for $350,000 per unit subsidy. Well, you know, that's just not realistic. So, you know, bring it on. And, you know, and if it requires more than 30%, it requires more than 30%. If it's an affordable, reasonable use of government money that we can provide the best level of service and the greatest benefit to the greatest amount of people, you know, if it's owner rehab, if it's fixing up these buildings so we can make existing housing stock affordable so we're not tearing things down. And as I think former Councilwoman Linda Salcena said, you know, building these white bricks and see, we can rehab some of these units and maybe make them affordable. I like that. And I hope that this council sometime in the future revisits that agenda item and provides the flexibility and the opportunity. Like you said, I love the idea of the artist housing. You know, I've been a big advocate for East Tampa as we develop in the CRA. I just had a conversation with Director Moody this week, reconfirming that I want to be able to do something with black artists in East Tampa and build a co-op for affordable housing, specifically highlighting black artists in that community. I think that would be a tremendous opportunity for the city and make a destination there. And we can do similar things in Ybor City. I know some of our private developers are already kicking in Ybor City because it's already a tourist destination, but we can expand those opportunities. So kudos, move forward. I like where you're going. Thank you.
Board member calls.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the thanks for your work on this. I think that I've spent a lot of time with Rich because I'm in Ybor just about every day because my other job is there. And I think Rich is the right leader at the right time to work on this bifurcated mission. It's not been easy separating YCDC from CRA, and I think he's done a great job of building consensus and bringing everyone together to try to lead that forward. And I think YCDC has tremendous potential. You all may know my colleague is the chair of the Ybor Chamber, and we've spoken at length with the Ybor Chamber, and all the things that YCDC is planning to do are not competitive with the Ybor Chamber. That's the first question a lot of people ask, but Ybor obviously needs support branding, advocacy, economic development. It's not just in Ybor, you can't just bring a big company in from outside and plant it there. It is a home to lots of small creative industries, some tech companies, one huge tech company, and defense contractors. And I think it has to be specially curated. And so it has to take a lot of sensitivity to look at it. Also, there are many different groups and interests within Ybor. There are the neighborhoods. Many people have been living there for a long time, but they have a slightly different perspective sometimes than the people whose families have been there for generations. There are people that go there just for entertainment, and they each have different subsets of culture that they interact with. And I think the big challenge we all have going forward with Ybor is how do we hold on to what's great about Ybor and make sure that we amplify that, but then we help it evolve into the new vision. And the new vision really is the thing that we've got to work on. There's a real estate development vision, but what the residents and business owners and patrons of Ybor are saying is they want an experiential vision that goes with that. And so we're all going to have to work together to define that. You all may know I'm very involved in the arts community in Ybor, trying to revitalize the arts, and you all are welcome to come to those meetings. They're open to everybody. But we went from a couple people a year and a half ago talking about the arts to 50 to 70 sometimes once a month. The next meeting is next Wednesday. And it is it's incredible seeing the excitement of what's going on. And, you know, when I was working in St. Pete in the mid to early 90s, in 94, there were 22 arts groups in downtown St. Pete. And I think what's going to happen is that this coming together is also going, and consensus building is also going to lead to different branches that are going to develop different kinds of arts. There are already different organizations, but it's going to lead to a lot of creativity and excitement because people want to move in different directions. And with all that said, this ad hoc arts group has put together 2 art walks so far, big art walks. The last one, unfortunately, was just a couple days before the shooting happened. But the next one is on April 18th, and I don't know if we have a night meeting that night, but if we don't, you all should try to attend it. It is one of the most interesting, exciting things that I've ever been to. And if we have a night meeting, we can go to it afterwards.
We don't.
But you will be so impressed by the people that show up, the excitement, the energy. This is the chance to see the arts connecting with everything, the restaurants, the bars, the galleries, the individual artists, HCC. I get chills thinking about it, and when you walk through, you'll be so proud of Tampa and so proud of Ybor when you walk through that. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Thank you for your report. Good morning.
Good morning. Courtney Orr, Interim Downtown Urban Core Development Manager. I'd like to introduce to you today Kittleson and Associates representatives who've been working on the Downtown CRP update. The original plan was developed in '83, an amendment was made in '88, so I think it's due time for us to update the plan. And they have been working on this for several months. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the draft report that includes outreach efforts, analysis of existing conditions, community needs assessment, and key priorities for the district. So an introduction that is key to this is the project prioritization and scoring matrix. So I have developed a tool that will help balance competing requests for funding and support, as well as a tool for the CRA to determine how well a project, program, or development aligns with the goals of the CRP. So Kittleson has completed 80% so far of their scope of work, and here today representing Kittleson is J.P. Wiesner and Reva Heinrich to provide details on the work details that they have completed to date. So I'll introduce Reva at this point to come on up. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I right to assume that you can see the presentation on your screens?
It will appear eventually.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, excellent. So thank you very much for having us. Again, my name is Reva Heinrich. I am a city planner with Kittleson Associates. We work right out of 400 North Tampa Street, which is a couple blocks away. I'm joined here by J.P. Wiesner, my colleague, working as project principal on this project. And over the last year or so, we've had the pleasure of working with your CRA staff to update the Downtown Community Redevelopment Plan, or the CRP. So overall, the goals here today is just to bring you up to speed on the work that's been completed to date. As Courtney mentioned, communicating those draft goals, policies, and strategic actions that form the framework of the plan. We'd love to intake your feedback, your reactions, and take that back to the the finalization process for the CRP and making sure that we've done our due diligence in terms of including those reactions. And with that, we'll get started. So you can see that we've been at work since February of last year. We've separated this effort into 4 overlapping phases. The first is the existing conditions analysis, so that did a review of the original 1983 plan, the 1988 amendment or the update, as well as current data for the downtown CRA boundaries. In addition to that, and concurrently, we also performed an outreach effort. So that was inclusive, as you can see, from monthly CAC meetings. We did a public drop-in at the John F. Germany Library in October. We also conducted interviews with all of you. You might remember me from those particular interviews. And then in addition to that, we also completed a public survey. Around the August timeframe, we started to develop the actual CRP, writing in the existing conditions, forming kind of those very high-level draft actions and goals. And at the far side of your screen, you'll see we're at the tail end of this process, getting ready to finalize things for review. We did want to bring you back to the original 1983 plan and the 1988 update. You can see here that we've combined both boundaries. So the 1983 plan established that original boundary, which is in that yellowish color on the map, and then the 1988 update combined the rest of the downtown CRA in addition to Harbor Island. And you can see that the goals weren't too dissimilar to what we're looking at today, but based on their context, they are very different. So they were looking to stimulate population growth, create new jobs, prevent crime, promote a mix of uses, also promote transportation solutions, in addition to balancing and growing the overall tax base. And you can see here, skipping forward 30 years or so, that the landscape of the downtown CRA has changed. So I believe when the 1983 plan was established, there were roughly 1,000 people living in the CRA. That has ballooned up to more than 7,000. There are roughly 70,000 jobs within the downtown CRA too. The tax value has increased both horizontally, meaning more places have developed, and vertically, so those places that were already developed during that time have grown in their own right. Criminal activity has decreased in recent years, matching city trends, and there's been a completion of major development, so the landscape literally changed. Things that I can name off are the Riverwalk, the Strass Center, changes to Curtis Hickson Park, Water Street is obviously one of the more recent developments, things along those lines. And as far as providing transportation solutions, it has one of the highest concentrations of multimodal options in the city. So as we embarked on looking at the overall existing conditions within the CRA, we wanted to obviously analyze everything from a modern context and bring that up to speed. We wanted to get some on-the-ground knowledge from stakeholders, so those are full organizations, both public and private, who have an understanding of the inner workings of the CRA, how projects are getting done. We also conducted 30 personalized conversations at the public drop-in. And from there, we determined that there were 7 needs categories that should framework the plan. And here they are, and you might recognize them from our conversations. Something to note here is that the next few slides are going to kind of condense a year's worth of work in terms of existing conditions into just a few slides, so just be prepared for that. But they are ordered here in terms of order of magnitude and priority as far as how we heard from the public and our stakeholders. And just a note here that these are not arbitrary, so we are bound by Chapter 163, Part 3, which is the overarching legislative and regulatory language that governs all CRA activities within the state. So we did abide by those specific definitions. So in reviewing the existing conditions, we asked 2 simple questions. First, how does the CRA compare to the rest of the city in terms of these metrics? Do they fare better, about the same, or are they a bit worse? And, or, were there issues that were brought up during our stakeholder interviews, during our interactions with the public, as well as things that we noticed in the data that we should bubble up to the surface in order to make it a priority for analysis? You can see here how those 7 needs categories are starting to make the framework for the plan. I'll start with affordable housing. That was easily the most obvious need within the CRA. We've already mentioned it a few times during this meeting. We found that there was not enough overall affordable housing stock within the CRA. So there are roughly 400-ish units within the CRA, but most of that is age restricted to those who are 55 and up. In addition to that, the variety of housing overall doesn't necessarily serve working families, those who are low income, and those who are providing needed employment services to our service industries. If you want to think about the convention center, the stress center, things along those lines. In addition to that, close to 40% of those who actually live in the CRA are rent burdened, meaning defined that they are providing more, often more times, much more than 30% of their income towards their housing costs. Related to public safety and quality of life, that overall talks about the experience of one who is living, working, and visiting the downtown CRA. That's related to criminal activity and accessibility to parks as well. We found that overall crime does match the city's trends year over year over a 5-year period. However, there's a higher propensity of trespassing, aggravated assault, and larceny within the downtown CRA as well. We also talked a lot with their stakeholders about the general maintenance of parks, ADA access, and where those challenges are as well. Related to transportation, while there is a really high concentration of multimodal options within the downtown CRA, that does mean that there are more vulnerable users, meaning those outside of a vehicle. We also reviewed the city's Vision Zero action plan and looked at the high injury network. There are 10 streets within the downtown CRA that are on the high injury network. The high injury network, if you don't know, is defined as streets that have a disproportionate amount of fatal and severe injury typologies of accidents. Related to land use and economic development, again, the downtown CRA has changed tremendously, but there is a high proportionality of underutilized parcels. We're defining underutilized here as the ratio of improved value to overall value on a parcel. Anything that's lower than 40%, we're considering underutilized. That is a metric that's been recommended by the Urban Land Institute. And I believe 30% of parcels in the downtown CRA are considered underutilized. Most of those are your surface parking lots, which can be under a variety of ownership, so public, private, things along those lines. Related to historic preservation, we talked to very passionate stakeholders and historians in and around the downtown CRA. They mentioned that while there were some structures that were up to code, up to snuff, there were other structures that were not wind-loaded properly, that would take an enormous amount of capital in order to bring up to specific code, and then they were not able to be reused in a way that honored their heritage. Rounding up the last two here, for urban design, we did do a comprehensive review of the city's regulatory documents that govern the aesthetic quality downtown, that includes zoning, the city center plan, Envision Tampa, the previous CRA vision plan as well. And when we spoke to stakeholders, it was revealed that while zoning obviously takes precedence, there isn't necessarily a communicated feel in and around the downtown. It just seems to change block to block, developer to developer, and they were looking for a unified document to help with that. And rounding things out with environmental infrastructure, we did start this plan with the backdrop of Hurricane Ian. So we looked at the devastation in cities just south of us, and I believe that Tampa narrowly missed a direct hit, hasn't been directly hit by a hurricane in a long time. So we wanted to understand if there was a higher risk for an administrative area that is surrounded on 3 sides by water and has an island. And we did find that in the event of a Category 3 storm surge, that 95% of assets would be at risk. So with all that in mind, we knew that the CRP had to address 3 primary goals. The first, it needed to address the needs identified in the existing conditions analysis. So we witnessed moments when there were outside funding requests that could not match the current CRP because it was written in 1983. It's just not updated enough. The data was not there to support it, and there was some pulling at strings trying to get that to work. We also wanted a plan that would align with department goals, knowing that the department has restructured, and then forming that around the finding of necessity and solving those mismatches in funding and what the market wanted to do. And finally, we wanted the plan to bend but not break under kind of the dynamism and the amount of, I guess, discussion that's going around in terms of the administration of the CRA. So this is the first time I'm presenting to you, but we've actually listened in on a few of these meetings. We know that there's an upcoming board vote and things along those lines that we have to consider, and we wanted to honor that and make sure that we built a plan that was resilient to that. So again, focusing on goals, policies, and actions, I did want to illustrate kind of where we are overall in the process. So we've talked about intake, stakeholder interviews, existing conditions, things along those lines. We organized those themes based off of goals that the CRA department have communicated to us, as well as the finding of necessity. As we mentioned, we formulated those into emerging needs that we just went through. And now we've ended on the goals, policies, and actions, and this is what makes the plan actionable. Items that the agency would be able to direct and communicate to the public and private entities in order to influence their requests and things along those lines. And as Courtney mentioned, we did want to form a process that blended into the overall CRA process for those outside funding requests, and something that filtered items through and scored them and ranked them appropriately. So you can see here what's illustrated is that the intention is that we get these outside funding requests. They are filtered through the goals, policies, and actions as defined in the plan. They are given a score, which I'll go over in the next couple of slides. And then from that score, you can create a rankings list based off of what you want to review, what you want to vote on, things along those lines. So, I'll take you through the very simple mathematics related to the scoring system. What I'll mention here is that we are still in a bit of a beta testing mode, so we're having our stakeholders review this as well concurrently. But the first thing that you should know is that each needs category has a maximum of 5 total raw points that can be attributed to it, meaning that an outside funding source can come in and they would evaluate themselves based off of how many strategic actions that were actually applied to that project. And from there, you're going to see here how that order of the needs categories is starting to make sense. Those 5 total raw points are then applied to a weighted multiplier that is in accordance to the priority that we received from the public, from the stakeholders, and from CRA staff. So you can see that affordable housing has the highest weight of 7 for the highest total points, which would be 35, all the way down to environmental infrastructure, and ranging in between. So let's say a project comes along for a vote. If it hits on every single needs category, it qualifies for every single strategic action, it has a total possible of 100 points as the perfect project. The intention here is that by the time it comes to the board presentation, that these projects have gone through a certain level of scrutiny, that they've been in a feedback loop with CRA staff, with the CAC, and with the overall CRP plan in order to provide a better product by the time it gets to you, that you have the appropriate amount of information that you need in order to vote on it, and you can be assured that it follows the CRP. Within your provided documents in here as well, we have recommended language. This is one of, I believe, 3 goals of the affordable and attainable housing section, and you can see how it's beginning to be structured. So the goal is the larger statement that's going to guide those projects in this particular direction. And then the strategic actions where you actually get those points are those minutia, those specific details in which you can direct those projects to be more in line with the plan and more in line with the agency goals. With that, our immediate next steps are again to meet with our stakeholders, make sure that there is clarity, ease of use, that the goals and strategic actions are reading well. We want to make sure that they are being integrated or we're able to hand over a plan that can be blended in with current CRA processes. We also want to make sure that the specific project typologies and comparisons are at an equal playing field. So one thing that you might be thinking about is that if a streetscape project comes through that may not touch on affordable housing, it may not touch on public safety and quality of life, things like that. But we want to refine down our goals to address what's needed in the CRA, but we don't want to do that to the point where we're discriminating against projects. So we're kind of experimenting in terms of how to make sure that the playing field is even for those types of projects. And then zooming out to the total timeline, after this presentation, we'll finalize everything. It'll be distributed to the relevant reviewers, so it has to go through legal, I believe it has to go to the county as well, and then we're anticipating a board vote on the overall plan in June of this year. With that, that is the end of the presentation.
Board Member Maniscalco, Board Member Carlson.
Thank you very much. That was a very thorough and detailed presentation. To continue along the lines of what Councilman Miranda mentioned earlier about Ybor City, things have changed.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back 150 years ago, this used to be where we're at now was a house. It was residential. Then it became the city hall, and it's been city hall or police station, whatever iteration since. Downtown was downtown. It was the center of Tampa, but as Tampa grew, we spread out. So a couple of things that you mentioned regarding environmental infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the last time we had a major storm come in, and there have been other storms throughout the years, but I'll go back to 1921, the photos that you see are of flooded downtown
Mm-hmm.
with people in canoes going down the streets. They call it Tampa Heights and Seminole Heights because if you go north, you see the road rise up. So you're away from the swamps and the flooding. This area has, it was not built properly, but go back to Tampa Town, the township, whatever it was in 1855, the settlement, Fort Brooke, whatever. That was Tampa at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and then it grew from there. So when it comes to environmental infrastructure, I've seen bad storms and I've seen manhole covers, floating because the water's backing up. I've seen roads flooding here, so that's something that we can invest in, but we can only do so much
Mm-hmm.
because of the geographic location. Just like South Tampa, much of it is a basin. Just like I can go on and on. When it comes to historic preservation, it's been a complete and total failure here in downtown Tampa. Some people think that downtown declined in the 70s and 80s, but if you go back to when John F. Kennedy visited here in 1963, there's photos of him coming down Franklin Street. And the buildings that you see in the background are there. But downtown was starting to decline, and it wasn't because the interstate was coming through. 1958, if you go to the front page of the Tampa Tribune, they talked about the highway coming through, dividing many of Tampa's neighborhoods. And this applies to Ybor City, as we talked about. People left the downtown core, and areas like West Shore got developed. The malls got built. Britton Plaza, Councilman Miranda touched on all those. It was the convenience of parking and the automobile and the freedom of the car, and this is in line with the great streetcar disappearance. People wanted the convenience, and it took a long time for people to say, and new generations say, we want to focus and invest in the urban core and not so much in the urban sprawl, and we're seeing that now. However, so much has been lost along those lines. My mother came down here in the 60s, down Franklin Street on a Saturday afternoon. You would see all your friends and everybody you knew. All the department stores, the Tampa Theater, the Florida Theater, places that I can't show you. I've studied these and I know these from photos. But those buildings got demolished. When I was in college, I was a year at University of Tampa before I went to HCC and Ybor and USF. And I met my friends at UT, some lived on campus, but what did we do? I said, because I always loved historic preservation and old buildings, and I said, why don't we walk across Kennedy and go to downtown? And I would be admiring the Crest building, which is still there. I would admire the Moss Brothers building, which was closed and is no longer there. I would admire Goody Goody. It was there until like 2005. These were all the old places, and I'm thinking, what was it like back then? Well, fast forward, a lot of those buildings have been demolished. You know, Moss Brothers is a parking lot. Franklin Street is not the commercial corridor. When we look at the original study from the 1980s, the slogan was, Tampa, America's next great city. And people, past leaders have taught America's next great city, but it took so long. There's a movie that was filmed in Tampa in the early 1970s, and one of the scenes, I forget the title, it's a horror movie. And one of the scenes is from like 1973, and it shows the guy at the hub, which is no longer there, walking down Franklin Street at night, and there's nobody downtown. There's nobody there. Downtown was dying in the 70s and 80s. When I would come down here with my dad in the early 90s, I couldn't drive because I was a kid, we would visit a guy at a music shop. The music shop building is still there, music store is not there, and he would be inside talking, and I would walk around, and it was an antique store, the building's demolished, so many things. But I remember meeting a gentleman, and he tells me, this is like 25 years ago, he goes, I could have bought the Crest building downtown for $250,000. And I go, why didn't you? And he goes, and do what? Spend $1 million to bring it to code? And still, I mean, it's vacant today, although things are happening with it. But anyways, housing is one of the biggest things. We talked about we didn't mention the Army-Navy site where we can build and grow from there. My time's run out, so thank you.
Guido brings back a lot of memories. When I was a kid, I'm older than Guido. When I was a kid, I remember my parents would bring me downtown shopping. Charlie probably has a lot of great memories of that. But, you know, before malls, you go shopping in downtown. It was a great place, although I guess it was starting to decline by the time I was a kid. I want to say thank you to you and the staff for putting this together. I was very happy to see the other day, I was telling Erica that this is a waypoint, and you're not coming back into us with the final stuff yet. You're explaining the process, which I think is exactly what we need to do with the board and the community. I just want to ask a few quick questions, and then also make a few quick comments. In the general opinion that you all have today, looking at downtown, do you think if we did not have a CRA, would downtown qualify for a new CRA today?
That's an excellent question. I suppose that isn't necessarily under our purview in terms of determining what the boundaries are for a specific CRA. I mentioned before that we are bound by Chapter 163, Part 3, which defines those slum and blight conditions. And we did find that there were elements within the downtown that qualified for that definition.
And where is that? It would be helpful to see that on a map.
Sure, that's great to know, and that's great feedback. I'll say that within the final plan, that there will be specific focus areas that you'll be able to see. Most of that is going to be north of Polk Street, so closer to I-275. There's a really large row of parking lots that kind of came out during the data and analysis, as well as portions of west.
So I'm going to interrupt you so I don't run out of time because they're timing me. But sorry. Back to 163, you talked about the finding of necessity. Attorneys can brief us, but besides slum and blight, I would like to include the other categories. One of them is housing, affordable housing, and I know disease is in there. I think that public safety is part of it, but it is
community policing innovations.
Yeah, so it is. I think slum and blight gives a bias toward real estate, and the other ones, show things that might connect with people more. In your categorization of I like the categories you have, but one of them is land use and economic development. By the description you have underneath it, it sounds like it's just land use. I would suggest taking economic development out. I think one of the things that's held the city of Tampa back for the last 10 or 20 years is that we think that land use and economic development are the same thing. But real estate development does not equal economic development. I see it as a subset of it. And so if you're looking at economic development more broadly, which I think we're partly limited to by 163, But if you're looking at that more broadly, then maybe you would make it economic development. But I just object to combining the two because it gets us stuck where we've been the last 15 years. And then you talked about aligning with department goals. As we think through that, the city has goals. We're also city council. The CRA has goals. I look at the CRA as a more nimble, entrepreneurial organization that can move fast and get things done. But we also have limited resources, and so I think we have to figure out what is the unique role of the CRA with the resources that we have, and it should not contradict what the city is doing, but it doesn't necessarily have to bolt onto what the city is doing either. In terms of, in some of your data, you talked about, and I won't ask these as questions yet so it doesn't take up too much time, but in jobs, I think you said 83,000 jobs. I would like to see a line graph going back 10 or 15 years to see how that compares to before, especially post-COVID, what the COVID impact was. In crime, we know that citywide, if you look at the FBI statistics, the crime shot up, I think it was 34%. Violent crime rate from 2019 to 2021. It's come down about 4% since then, but it would be interesting also to see that in context in a line graph going back. You talked about 60% tax increase. It seems to me if you're going back to 1983 that it would be much more than that, and so maybe it would be interesting to see a line graph also going back to 83 about what was the property tax captured in these areas. And the last thing is that I've said this before, and we're going to talk about it again in a month, but the thing for downtown, we've got to have another test that goes on top of all this. And the test is that if you're standing in front of somebody's house and their road is absolutely falling apart, you've got to explain to them that what we're investing in downtown is more important than fixing their roads. And the other thing, we have people, you saw this morning, talking about East Tampa, Sulphur Springs. We have to be able to stand in those neighborhoods and say, what we're spending money on downtown is more important than what we would spend it on in Sulphur Springs or East Tampa. That has to be part of the equation because the community is awake now to how this money in downtown is being spent. And if it's something that's nice to have, the community's not gonna like that anymore. They don't want their taxes increased. They don't want lots of bonding. And they want us to spend the money carefully. And with that also, I think we need to empower, I've talked to Erica about this, we'll talk about it in her presentation, but we need to empower the staff to say no and make it what I mean is we need to narrowly define what the criteria is so that staff can give an emphatic no, and there are very few ways that people can go around staff and come to the CRA board because it takes too much of our time and the public's time to have people bringing projects that don't match the criteria in the way it's set up. So thank you.
Board Member Hurtak, Board Member Clendon, and Board Member Vieira.
Thank you. Could you go back a couple of slides?
Sure.
Yeah, right here. So will we be getting a copy of these goals and strategic action plans, like the ones that the draft language ones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say, because that's kind of what I need in order to go forward. I don't know what the goals are.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just to explain a little bit the process, because they're in the midst of drafting the plan.
Okay.
But when they're ready to present the final plan, it will come first to this board for you all to review and accept for processing if you feel it's ready to go. So before it goes to the Planning Commission, before it goes back to you all for a recommendation of approval, which it has to do under the statute, before it comes to you for adoption of City Council, you'll have several times to review and to discuss that. So
yes, but that's sort of my concern. I don't want the next time that I don't want the first time we see these goals to be at this next meeting. I want them ahead of time. I want to digest them. I want to discuss them so that when you come to us, we are prepared. So I don't know if that's individual meetings, however that works, but I want a little more knowledge.
And the time frame is not mandated at all. If you all would like to have a presentation of the draft before you actually act on it, that can be done as well. So,
No, I don't think that. I would just like to see it and digest it and kind of talk about it before it comes, so we don't have to do a second one. That's what I want to try to prevent. Because that, as Board Member Carlson said, that happens a lot here. But one of the biggest things that I think is very interesting about what you talked about, and the key for me is underutilized land and buildings and how we activate them. Just had a conversation on Tuesday. A bunch of us got together to talk about Nebraska Avenue corridor. And one of the things was, how do we activate underutilized, derelict buildings? And other cities have done it, so I know there's got to be a way. So I would really love some input on that, because we really struggle. We have all these buildings that just sit. Yeah. And they're just, you know, it's demolition by neglect, and we just have a real problem with that. So really working on and giving us some solutions on how we go forward. And I mean, if we can get some ideas for downtown, then we can also spread them out throughout the rest of the city. But that's the real a stopping point I see with downtown and the CRP. And I also really want to say how much I appreciate your focus on, and it's heartening, I guess, to see that all the stakeholders really agree that affordable housing is a huge issue. I did not expect it to be as high as it was, and I think that's very telling and very interesting. So I appreciate this, and like I said, I really look forward to seeing these goals moving forward. But this is great. Your 7 points of focus do seem to fit in exactly with what we need to be focusing on. So thank you.
Board Member Clendon.
Boy, sometimes it's funny how people look at things differently. Although you're right in my head about, I was going to actually ask in this part of my discussion is that I need to have a comprehensive briefing on this one-on-one, because some of this stuff hit me like a ton of bricks. You know, this is kind of like what I hinted on the Ybor City presentation about how impressed I was with that, and comparing it to previous government documents. Some of this is just government at its worst. I think it's an oversimplification and almost a high school effort on assigning points. And I don't mean to hurt people's feelings, and I know people put a lot of work in this, but these issues are so much more complicated than arbitrarily assigning point values and weights and then coming up with a total. And you kind of hinted at that, like on streetscapes. You know, there may be a very important project at streetscapes that just doesn't meet that weighted scale. You know, and when we as a board, as a deciding factor as a board, are presented with a very specific project, we may approve a very specific project because at that moment in time, that's what's important. You know, affordable housing opportunities, unfortunately, because of the cost of land and all in downtown, we don't have a lot of the affordable housing opportunities. You know, we have one specific project that we're targeting and working on, but it's different to parlay that across the entire footprint of the downtown, which I think everybody recognizes because of the cost of the downtown CRA. So it's difficult to wedge that into an arbitrary point value scale. I think coming up with a CRP that has goals and values that we all share and that we're trying to achieve is important, and making those values clear. But I think, again, every single project stands on its own. They're all so independent. You know, so whatever project comes before this board, we weight them individually on how it meets the needs of the people that are living in the city first, that currently live in the city, and how it meets the needs of the future growth of the city. I think Councilman Maniscalco hit, you know, environment and resiliency in downtown is an important element of, and it's funny to see it so low in the weighted scale, because I mean, if anywhere, downtown is one of our most vulnerable areas of that historic preservation downtown. I mean, we just saw what happened with the construction of a high rise and saving the facades. And while we don't have a lot of great facades left in downtown because of all the destruction that's occurred by neglect, as Councilman Hurtek said, you know, it's you know, so many beautiful. I mean, I'm not as old as Councilman Miranda, but I've seen an awful lot of beautiful buildings downtown. You know, just well, that's true. You know, that may be a fact. I can't debate that today. You know, you got to take it when you can get it. But it's you know, so many buildings. So I weight that. I mean, historic preservation is so important to the cultural fabric of a city, and you know, it's difficult to say, throw an arbitrary point value that on a specific project, when we're talking about holding on to that building or holding on to that real estate and how critical that is. You know, we've got a couple blocks here of some amazing facades that I'd hate to see vanish in years gone by because of a point system that didn't quite make the scale. So that's my input. I look forward to having the one-on-one conversations to work our way through this, to create a better system so that we can have a flexible system that meets all the needs of the city.
Board Member Vieira, Board Member Miranda.
Thank you very much, Madam, and thank you very much for your detailed presentation. We really appreciate all the hard work that obviously went into this with you and staff, et cetera. My big challenge with the downtown CRA is when you look at some of the things that we've been spending funds on in the downtown CRA, we're not treating it like a CRA. CRA is supposed to deal with slum and blight, right? And some of the things that we've dealt with recently in the downtown CRA, to the level that we've dedicated them, I don't really think go to that issue. So if we're looking at, and there's been a lot of discussion over the last few years with the downtown CRA, including a lot of talk on capping the downtown CRA. I've always voted for that. I don't think city council's ever turned that away, right? And I hope if there's any money left over, because that's gonna be the big issue, right? Because that is a big issue, that we can still do that and spend some money in other areas of the city. The big challenge is, I believe, I know we did the Strat Center for $25 million. In year 5, that's going to take up anywhere from, as I recall, I could be wrong, 30 to 40% of our CRA budget, right? That's not slum and blight, $25 million for the Strat Center. We recently dedicated an additional $10 million to the Tampa Museum of Art, right? That's not necessarily slum and blight. By the way, I voted for the first $15 million for that, so I'm not putting down that project, and there's a lot of grace sometimes in a lot of these things. But so my big issue is there is some slum and blight in downtown Tampa. We've dedicated funds, for example, to the Jackson House, and whenever that gets lifted, we've done things with Kid Mason. For example, there's a lot of things that we can do. We talk a lot about the streetcar, for example. Some of those funds could have been used for, imagine what we could have done, as I said years ago, for things like the streetcar without those funds, as well as for housing. So those are things that to me are more compatible with the downtown CRA's purpose, right? I've supported capping the downtown CRA. I think if you were to poll the people of Tampa, that probably 90% would support capping the downtown CRA. A really, really high number. But we've never gone in that direction, and we've spent these funds on things that I don't think are consistent to the robust level that we've put them in with combating slum and blight, which is why I voted why I have, and I'll continue to stand by that. So we're going to have a lot of dialogue on the downtown CRA. We're going to continue to. But the big challenge is, given these investments that we've made, and for things, by the way, that if you look at them independently, they're wonderful projects. They're really, really wonderful projects. But you do have to ask people in other parts of the city, would you have rather, if we could have capped it, right, use those funds for paving their streets, fixing their sidewalks, wonderful projects all around. But the big issue is, if we look at the future of the downtown CRA, what funds are we going to have left over the next few years? That's a really, really important question to ask. So we do have a lot of debates on the downtown CRA as well as channel side, 2 distinct CRAs in terms of the legal process for maybe toning things down a little bit. And we always have to pat ourselves on the back, I think, as a city for the progress we have seen downtown. You know, I've been an attorney for 21 years, and I talked to other attorneys who have worked downtown for a really, really long time. The change we've seen in downtown has been tremendous. I think one of the biggest challenges we got to continue to make downtown is to make downtown family friendly, right? Not just with safety, not just with housing, improving our parks, make sure that people from all over the city of Tampa and all over our area come to downtown and can have a family friendly time there. It's important for a city to put some special deference or emphasis on downtown because a city without a viable, without a residential, without a growing downtown is a dying city, right? That's something that's important. So just wanted to give my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, when you talk about dying cities, I'm not for everything, nor am I against anything. I see them all individually as they come by. But let me say this. Name me one city, just one, that has a population of 250,000 or more and has a dying downtown and is prosperous. Just name me one. Anybody. The problem with these things are that you have so many needs for that dollar, and that no matter what decision you make, they're not gonna satisfy everyone. So in this case, you have a vibrant you didn't have a streetcar here. In fact, the streetcar, I just noticed the other day on one of the TV stations, I think it was Channel 13, I'm not sure, said it by vote by someone throughout the country, this is one of the most vibrant streetcars in America. So you look around and you said, what have we done, what are we doing, and how are we gonna change what we've done or prosper better? Name me another downtown that had a jail in downtown. 600 inmates. And maybe 6 others walking the streets to get into the jail. That's what you had at downtown. I can make a left here, go without ever looking to my right because there was no cars coming. So you can talk the talk, walk the walk, but you got to live it to understand it. I've lived it. I'm not the smartest in the world, but I can tell you this. What downtown has meant to Tampa has been a vibrant thing that's made the city understand the necessity and the need for other things. So when you look at the Straz and you look at other things, is it deserving of what it got? Depends on who you ask. They were there when no one was here. They stuck it out through thick and thin. The whole garage was built to facilitate not only them, but others that were here in 1970-something. So you look around and you said, did we do the right thing? What would it be now? Where would your lady restaurant be if it wasn't for a vibrant downtown and areas that we've done? Nowhere. Where would the development happen in the good neighbors just to the northwest of us? All that area now that is the primest part of the city, right next to the river where one of the city council members lives in. Nowhere. Where would the connectivity between here and Ybor City be? More likely not what it is today and not what it's going to be tomorrow. So you have to look beyond what you say, oh, I'm going to beat my chest and tell you that. Of course there's potholes in the city streets. In fact, some of them I call them Measles Boulevard. But you know what? That's going to get done. What if this wasn't done? That would have been done. But what void would you leave? They're not telling you that part. They're just telling you the political part. Well, I'm not a politician. People like me or dislike it, that's their choice. I tell it just like I see it. So what I see here is an opportunity to continue the success that we've had in doing what we've done. A lot of people don't like anyone moving into the neighborhood because their services are diminished in some form. And I understand that. The worst thing that can happen to a city is what happened to any city that's moving in the right direction. And that is that you buy a house 35, 40, 50 years ago for $12,000, you sell it for $500,000, and you can't buy a house for $500,000. That's the problem we have. And nobody's talking about it. So we created a problem that may have a solution, but it's going to take some time because we weren't ready for the upswing so quickly. No one expected this. No one can say, I charted this and I hit all the goals I wanted. None. It just happened. It happened for various reasons. The environment. The northern people got a little older and they didn't want to walk in the snow no more. They didn't want to slip and fall and get a hip injury or whatever. I sat next to a lady yesterday at a baseball game. The Yankees versus Pittsburgh. And she was telling me she can't wait for her 16-year-old son to graduate so she can move to somewhere in the South. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That's the reason.
Thank you, Board Member Miranda. Just a few thoughts. I'm glad that you have the slide up regarding affordable and attainable housing. I don't feel comfortable having a conversation about capping the downtown CRA because of, you know, the initial decisions made by this board for the Straz as well as the museum. I had a hard time, you know, understanding and getting on board with that. But at the same time, there are opportunities for affordable housing in downtown. So having the conversation about capping CRAs for downtown is not understandable to me when that goal of attainable housing in the downtown urban area is a significant priority, and we still have opportunities there. I constantly pull up the history of, why CRAs were developed, and it was against the backdrop of urban decay and, of course, discriminatory practices in urban areas. So the opportunity to continue to invest in downtown so that we can see citizens, ordinary citizens of a certain income level, be able to live in spaces where a lot of people who can afford significant properties also live. And this is still an opportunity that exists in downtown, and we should do everything in our power to look for opportunities to do that. But thank you for your presentation, and I look forward to this draft language growing and having our input. It's not just thrown at us and we got to make a decision. So I agree that we are having the opportunity to really think about the end goals and what we want to send out to Hillsborough County and our other stakeholders to look at this. Okay. Did you want to say something, or you're just standing by? You've been standing there for a minute, so introduce yourself again, and if you want to just sum up some things that were not mentioned, go ahead and do that.
I'm J.P. Wiesner with Kittleson Associates, 400 North Tampa. I was here really to support Riva if there were any questions that may come up. No other summaries. I thank you all for a lot of your input. I think we did provide all of the goals under each category and the actions in a sort of summarized spreadsheet file. But we'll have that as part of the report as well, enumerated out for you to review as well for all of those pieces. And so, just thank you very much for all of your comments. They're very helpful. And we'll incorporate that into our next round.
Board Member Board Member Carlson, you want to say something else?
Yeah, considering some of the comments, I just wanted to remind my colleagues and the public, every major reinvention of a city or an area is connected to the arts and culture. And the reason why St. Petersburg succeeded was because they invested in the arts and culture and connectivity to people first. It's what I call the software. What Tampa did instead is focused on the hardware, and that's why I always say that economic development is separate from land use. We build a bunch of buildings, but ask anybody from downtown St. Pete to come to downtown Tampa, and what they see is that we're still lacking the heart and soul. And the reason is that because of the Great Recession and also policies against the arts, the city of Tampa did not invest in the arts for 15 or 20 years. In fact, defunded them. And there are several city-owned buildings that were in bad shape. One of them is Tampa Theater, which is beloved by everyone. During COVID, there was a need to try to restart the economy in downtown. City-owned arts facilities are things that can be attended to or participated in by anybody citywide, and so there's a way to justify it to people outside of downtown by saying that you can attend these, you participate in these. Also, the arts are inextricably tied to economic development growth. Anytime a city plants the arts in the middle of something, everything develops around it. That's why it's so critical that it goes into Ybor. City-owned facilities were not doing very well, and they needed to be renovated, especially historic buildings like Tampa Theater. But in the middle of COVID, the private sector was not investing. And so and I will admit that I was one of the main people that pushed for a stimulus, in effect, to come in and add the arts, add culture, add activity to downtown. It's absolutely related to land use development and economic development, and it helps our people throughout. I don't want to give anybody the impression that the arts are not a good investment, and it's absolutely tied to 163 in the way that we develop. First of all, they're renovating and rebuilding physical infrastructure, and Strat Center is going to build a $100 million facility, and we're only paying 25%. It's actually a pretty good deal. There are some people in politics, not talking about my colleagues, but across the hall that didn't like those investments because they're the historic investments in the arts, the biggest investments ever made in the arts. And we never sent out a press release to pound our chests about it, but I think we should be proud that we made big investments in the future of our downtown, and we supported major infrastructure projects with the city. The last thing I'll say is that last administration pushed to give a $100 million subsidy to a real estate project in downtown. The public absolutely was opposed to it. And 4 years ago, I made the motion, and the board at the time supported it, spending 30% on affordable housing. Whether you agree with the 30% or not, there was no direction in the city for at least 10 or more years to focus on affordable housing until we made that decision. The whole reason the city and CRA focus on affordable housing is because we as a board decided to do that, and we started putting big dollars pushing forward. But at the time, I made a motion to sunset the downtown CRA and move the money to East Tampa, Sulphur Springs, and parts of New Tampa, and the vote was 6-1. Immediately after that was the vote to sunset or cap downtown. Seeing that I didn't have the votes, I continued it. And then what I saw after that is that if we didn't spend the money on things that were critical for redeveloping downtown, somebody was going to propose spending it to subsidize developers. And I think subsidizing developers is anti-competitive. You know, why is it fair that one developer gets $100 million and the one a few blocks away gets $0? It doesn't work. It's anti-competitive. It's against market economics. And what we need to do is focus on critical infrastructure to really boost and grow our communities to make sure they flourish. Thank you.
You know what, I actually appreciate those comments, because that is, you know, initially I didn't understand it, and you explained why. You said, I'll take the blame for it. I remember you saying that about, you know, supporting, giving dollars to the Straz, and even coming behind that and supporting the Arts Museum. One of the things that's interesting about that is that, yes, it can benefit everyone, but it actually, when you go look at the meat of it and crust of it, it doesn't. And so with CRA dollars, they're not required to provide community benefit agreements. That's why I made that motion when we gave the money to the Art Museum, is that they develop a community agreement because of the significant amount of funds that we give them to stretch the muscle of going beyond free classes for students on free and reduced lunch. It is an art museum that needs to attract the diversity of the community that it represents. So, you know, I appreciate your comments.
Can I just add one more?
Yeah, sure.
You just remind me of something. Think about assuming, I mean, you have a business that has brought, in a sense, arts and culture to the neighborhood that your business is in. Assuming you succeed, and I think you will by all the buzz, look around the neighborhood around your store. And I recommend taking pictures of it and come back in 2 years or 3 years and see what's developed around it, because you're adding connectivity, you're adding experiences, and even though the neighborhood is successful, I think, you know, anytime you put arts in the middle of a neighborhood or a community, it adds to the ambiance, and people want to live and work and interact around the arts. You're drawing people in who not only come to buy books, but they're also coming, you know, for a common experience.
Yes, board member Ybor.
Yeah, and I do want to point out something, which is with Councilman Carlson championed sunsetting the downtown CRA, but then there's also capping the downtown CRA, which it's my belief that was never voted down on city council. That's my recollection. Did we ever vote down capping we voted down capping channel side, but not downtown CRA. I have no recollection of that. I can have staff look at that, of course.
No, what I just said what happened, and what happened is I made the motion to cap or sunset the Channel District one, and the downtown one was immediately after that. And we were running out of time, but also I could see that I didn't have the votes because it was 6-1 against the. But you're right, we never voted on it. So what I did is I continued it, and then I brought it up again 3-4 years later, which is why it's coming up again. So no, you never voted. I will confirm you never voted in either way about downtown, and we will get a chance to do that soon.
We did. I recall 4-3 vote to forward. Is that Mr. Massey?
A couple of things. Next CRA meeting, we're going to discuss the potential of capping the downtown TIF. All of these things that you're talking about are governed by an interlocal agreement between the county, the city, and the CRA. And you've made a number of motions about various items that would impact that interlocal agreement. So what I've asked you all as a board to do in April is to consider all these motions together to determine what we want to go to ask the county for, because we can't I don't want to go to the county 6 or 7 times on different requests. We need to consolidate what we want, maybe narrow it down even. There may be a consideration about what's really important. And I think part of the issue with the capping downtown, this is a conversation for next month, is that the commitments that we've made limit our ability to really cap the downtown CRA for a period of time. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. And then I'll add a couple other things. Under the current downtown community development plan, even though it's very old, it identified, and one of the major goals in that community redevelopment plan was the importance of cultural institutions in downtown and the city being kind of the cultural center for the area. And actually, the development of a cultural arts district where the museum and the Performing Arts Center are currently located. So all those efforts are, you can argue about how much we've spent and the policy, but those actions that you have taken to help redevelop those facilities are consistent, in my opinion, with the current downtown community redevelopment plan. In addition, the infrastructure that's being done on Water Street, it's all public infrastructure, which is also consistent with both 163 and the community.
Sure. And may I, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, and when I talk about a blight, et cetera, I'm not talking about from a legal perspective, is this would violate the law? Obviously, no accusation of that. It's more so in terms of the level of dedication. For example, I voted for $15 million for the Museum of Art. Fine, voted against additional $10 million. Because, again, if you're looking at the potential of capping the downtown CRA, we could use those funds in other parts of the city, or alternative, we talk a lot about things like the streetcar. We could use part of that money for the streetcar or for other different things. That's the analysis that I apply to it. Obviously, I have nothing against, the arts are a robust part of downtown, right? But my view is let's not stretch a triple into a home run. That's it. That's my message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your report.
Thank you.
Ms. Moody? It's your turn. And remember, we're also addressing, well, I know you remember.
Yes, I was just going to do that as well.
Okay.
So just cleaning up the agenda a little bit, if I could turn your direction to the item that I'll be reporting on is, oh, I'm sorry, I stole yours. So this is item 3, the CRA Director's Monthly Report, but I will also be addressing items 4, 5, and 6 since they relate to grant improvements. So I'd like to ask for those items to be heard together right now.
Second.
All those in favor?
And I do have one more agenda request. I made a mistake earlier by asking to request item number 16. Item 16 is requesting the amendment for the Tampa Union Station that was motioned last meeting, and that amendment is item 19. So item 19 speaks to number 16 and will be heard during the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So do we
Do
need
you
a
need
motion
to add
for
it
that,
back on?
Mr.?
I would make a motion to.
Okay.
I motion to add 16 back to the
Correct,
agenda.
and it'll be addressed in connection with item
Can I have
19.
a
with that.
second? Board Member Miranda, thank you. All those in favor? Okay.
Thank you so much. And then if I could direct T and I to pull up the CRA Director's Report. We are
And
very.
we're also 24 and 25. in your report.
Yes, well, I will address 24 and 25 in the Director's Report as well. Yes, we had a busy month with 26 total
We
items.
have a lot of talking to do today.
Yeah, 31 minutes.
Okay, there. I get hungry too. For the record, Erica Moody, CRA Director.
Yeah, bless you.
Awesome. Thank you, appreciate you. Well, we are excited, also a little nervous, and I was thinking to myself, nerves are good because it means you're about to do something important. And this is a big part of our restructure where we will be presenting on our commercial grants division. And as you know, the restructure has really been increasing staff capacity, but mostly going from geographic specific to each district to more departmental specific. So now we have built out a commercial grants team, we have a residential housing team, we have a project team that's growing, and an administrative team as well. So this is the commercial grants division presentation where we've been spending the last 6 months doing a comprehensive audit of all of our grants and programs and seeing how we can streamline and just increase efficiencies. So with that, I'd like to invite our economic development coordinator, who is essentially our grants manager, up to introduce herself, and I'd like to just acknowledge some people who are part of this work that I'll be speaking to today. So if Ms. Dee Reed could come up. And while she comes up, I'll just have some other of our economic development coordinators wave. We have Miss Andrea Rosshaven in the back.
Good morning.
She is part of our commercial grants team, and then we have Miss Vanessa Ross as well, and she's part of our grants team, and then we have 2 more members that are not here today. So, Dee, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
My name is Dee Reed, and I am your Economic Development Coordinator, and I've served in that capacity since October of last year. And I supervise the grants team that you just met. Just to give you a little background on me, I started working in the CRA back in 2016. Kind of worked my way up the ladder. Prior to coming to my employment here at the City of Tampa, my last position was a senior CRA project manager. And so I've got a lot of experience, pretty good amount of experience working with CRAs and grants and just kind of tracking, restructuring. So I'm going to turn the mic back over to Director Moody, and I'll be here to assist with any technical questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm just glad that you can meet our power team who has just been coming in and trying to simplify the process. So one of my skills is taking things apart and putting them back together, and that's what we've done with the commercial grants team. Really done a deep dive, and in my memorandum you can see a really honest reflection, and that's part of the evaluation process, is to look at what we're doing and then be brave enough to say it wasn't working. So part of this is taking that honest look, providing some of those findings that we had, and then recommendations on how we can make it better. So as we'll dive into our presentation, what we'll go over today is a little bit of background, why we're here, the approach and how we did it, some challenges and what we found, finding and recommendations with suggestions on how we can make it better, and then next steps to let you and the public know where do we go from here. So in February 2023, which I can't believe was a year ago, the CRA board approved the restructure of the CRA. We've been making great progress, and a big part of that was the first CRA board retreat that was in June 2023, which was my first week, and I was so glad that I was here to be able to hear us address the board address some challenges and your goals as we moved forward implementing the restructure. And then part of the retreat, we pulled out some key challenges that the board wanted us to address. And we've been making progress in them, such as reforming the CRA bylaws and the CAC policy. So that's been occurring. And as you know, it's a process. So we make a decision, and then implementing it takes time as well. Updating the CRA's mission, vision, and objectives so we can really know the goals of our board members, the goals of our community, and then use that as a baseline for decision making, which I'll speak to as well. Also updating the community redevelopment plans. Some were over 10 years old, so I am looking at updating them every 10 years so that they can stay relevant, and that's part of the evaluation process. Right now we have Tampa Heights, Central Park, Downtown CRA, and then we also are excited to get the East Tampa Community Redevelopment Plan off the ground as well. So those are some major initiatives, but today I'll be here talking about how we conducted a comprehensive grant assessment to streamline processes. And then some of the more deliverables that will be coming your way is relocating the staff to one location. So we're really busy shutting down the Ybor office, the East Tampa office, consolidating the staff to the second floor of the downtown municipal building, and just working together as a team. Also improving our communication and outreach efforts so people know who we are and what we do. So I'll be speaking on that more in the future as well. And then turning all of this into metrics and like a business dashboard for performance monitoring so you can keep your eyes on us and the community can hold us accountable as well. So today we'll dive into the commercial grant audit. And the board even made some motions over time. So these are the different motions, numbers 4 through 6, that I asked for them to be lumped together. We have a motion for the CRA staff to be requested to complete a written application, criteria, scoring matrix, and application process for all CRA grant requests and proposals that don't fall within an existing CRA program, and to approve special projects and TIF grant programs with the requirement of staff, CAC, and CRA board recommendations and approvals. So part of the scoring matrix that you'll see on the grant program descriptions accomplishes that. And then the project prioritization matrix that you heard from the downtown CRP consultants, that is part of the board directive too, is to create the scoring criteria so then we can equitably score these requests that are coming our way and then ensure that they're in line with the goals. Another motion that we had was for the CRA staff to discuss a possible rule to require RFPs for CRA investments over $1 million. You'll see that. And then third one was CRA staff requested to create a 2 to 3 step process for projects exceeding $500,000 and for us to report back today. And then the last motion is one that's actually on April agenda, but we can definitely address today. It's for CRA staff to be requested to discuss raising the threshold for the microgrant levels due to inflation and other issues. So these are our goals. We have attainable housing, connectivity, transportation, economic development, quality of life, and community engagement. So we are really using this as a baseline to measure everything that we do, and all the staff has it in their offices, so we can live what we say. So going into the approach, how did we do it? We didn't come in and just make the changes. We made sure we started by listening and learning, and then now we're in the leading process. So we listened to the goals and the priority of our board, as well as the advisory committees. We held detailed interviews with each CRA manager about 6 months ago for each district to learn about the utilization rates, what people liked, what they didn't like, and how the managers were struggling getting some of these grants out the door. And then what we learned was we conducted a comprehensive analysis of all CRA grants. So in the commercial side, it's 10 to 11 grants that we'll see. So we did a deep dive in every single one, which districts they were in, and we found a lot of duplication of work and different requirements that were just confusing. We also did a deep dive into the community redevelopment plans, which was great because coming in as a new director, I needed to read all of those, so I got to do it with a lens of matching it to our grants and programs. So each CRP has been audited in this process. And then we also researched best practices and wanted to kind of find some innovative ways. So we looked at what's working in other communities, and then we also encouraged like creativity and outside of the box thinking that we'll kind of explore today as well. In the leading process, we've consolidated the grants and created new documents. So you have received 4 different grants that we'll be talking about today, and they're comprehensive program descriptions, but also trying to make them as simple as possible so people actually read them and apply. And then we worked with Attorney Massey, thank you so much, to reduce any red tape and expedite awards. So we've been going back and forth for a few months, saying, is this absolutely necessary? And trying to remove any of the bureaucracy or red tape or restrictions, just like we heard from a public comment this morning. If it's not absolutely necessary, then let's cut it from the process. And then we've just made our rounds to each community advisory committee. So we've presented these findings that we're talking about with you today to the community. So that has been really fun going around. Our grants team has gotten to meet the community members, meet the CACs, and it's just important that we made them aware before coming to you. And then encourage creativity and innovation along the way. So I know government can be a little slow and not the most exciting, but we wanted to make it fun and encourage our staff to team build and really make it appealing, aesthetic, and fun. So challenges. I was debating whether to put these pictures on here, but these are the looks we get every day when people contact us and they're like, how can I apply for a CRA grant? We're like, well, which district do you live in? You have to read these 10 grant programs to see what you want. Once you do, fill out this application, then you'll go through a series of steps. And the more we explain the process, the more they looked at us like, I didn't even want to bother with it. I know some Ybor CAC members were saying it's too complicated. People don't, want to bother with it because it just requires too much, and they'd rather, do without. So there's a maze here that people would previously have to go through, and also the hurdles that they'd have to jump to move forward. We heard there's too complicated, confusing, limiting, restricting, long approval timelines, which we'll talk about as well, because with our commercial grants, you cannot pull any permits before you receive the award. So if someone pulled a permit, they would become ineligible, and if they did apply, and if it took too long to get our approval, then their project may fall through due to long timelines. Outreach and promotion. I know a lot of the community members have been, how are you promoting these programs? How are you letting the community know our offerings? So really focusing on that and making it a priority. As we did the interviews with CRA managers in the community, we learned really low utilization rates. And we were surprised that some of the staff was excited that 3 or 4 a year was considered high utilization, and we didn't agree. So we really looked at the budget to actual spending and want to increase the utilization rates because we have these programs and offerings available, but they're no good if people don't use them. Monitoring and evaluation, we found this to be an issue as well. People would get a grant and we would send them their grant award, tell them good luck with your project, and weren't really monitoring throughout the lifespan of the grant award. And then they would come back and submit for reimbursement at the end, and then we'd say, oh gosh, you're out of compliance here, here, here. And then, it would it really hurt the customer satisfaction because they wouldn't know that there's a problem until the very end of the grant. So we've implemented monitoring checklists, the staff is going out, taking pictures, and I'll talk about that more as we move forward. Of course, compliance with the CRP in Chapter 163, which I know everyone knows really well. But people come to us with a project and they're like, listen to my idea. But, the number one thing is, how is it in line with the state statute and how is it in line with the community redevelopment plan? So making sure that it is a good project and also matches with our statutory requirements. And then as I mentioned, customer satisfaction, doing community redevelopment work is rewarding because we get to impact people's lives positively. So that's our goal here, is to just provide excellent customer and service delivery. So recommendations, how can we make it better? I'm sure you're done hearing about Chapter 163, but I call this slide back to the basics. And we can do that through memorandums and template reporting. So when staff brings you a recommendation, we've done the homework and have verified that it's legal and in line with Chapter 163, that it's included in the CRP, that it's aligned with the board's objectives, and then can we afford it? Is it in the budget? So we call this back to the basics slide, and this can be clearly laid out in memorandums that come your way, so you know that we've done our checklist.
Good.
Recommendations, how can we make it better? So consolidate, instead of having a bunch of different programs across different districts, really consolidating it. So as we move forward, the first discussion that I had was, let's make it so simple. Are we improving the outside of the building, the inside of the building, or is it pre-development work for more architects and engineer conceptual design? So is it the outside, the inside, or are you doing pre-development? And then if it doesn't fit in one of those, it would be a special request that we'll get into as well. So simplify it, taking out any technical jargon, widening the scope, which I'll speak to. There was a board motion to see if we can increase the microgrant thresholds. And I learned a lot through that because we don't have a grant called microgrant. So I'm like, what is a microgrant? And what I learned was a microgrant were the grants that were created that were under the $25,000 threshold, and the board had approved previously for administrative approval for any grant under $25,000. And that was considered a microgrant to the community. So as we made our rounds to the CACs, they were concerned. They said, we like our microgrants because we can get the grants out the door faster, because staff can approve them and they don't have to get on a CAC agenda and then on a board agenda, and the timeline, be extended out from there. Scoring matrix. So one of the motions directed us to implement a scoring matrix, as I talked about. So you'll see that in the grant program descriptions, monitoring, reporting, promotion, customer service, which we talked about. So some deliverables. So when Ms. Reed first started, she got right in there and said, what do you want? And we created a work plan with key deliverables after the assessment of some documents that we'll need. So today we've developed this presentation to present our recommendations. We've provided the 4 updated grant program descriptions. We've created 1 uniform application, which was part of a board directive. We've implemented that scoring rubric. We have retrained our staff that now work in the department. So that is their specialty, is grant administration. We've also started assigning grant specialists. So when someone receives an award, they will say, Miss Reed or Miss Rosshaven or Miss Ross is your grant point of contact. So this is the person that you reach out to if you have any questions. This is who will be reaching out to you to come and visit and monitor your site. So they start to build a relationship and they have a direct point person for their award. We've also implemented pre-application meetings. I did find that when people filled out an application and sent it to us, there was some misunderstanding that it was automatically approved. So people would send us an application of which we would take through the process, but once they submitted it, they had an understanding that once I submit it, I'm approved and I can do the project. So we actually are implementing pre-application meetings because we want to meet with them first, learn about their site, learn about their projects, but more importantly, we might be able to find more ways to get them funding, connect them to additional resources. So they might come in for a facade grant, but then they can actually stack or an exterior grant, but they could actually maybe stack an exterior grant with an interior grant. So we can actually make some recommendations since we know the program so well, we want to provide the maximum resources available. We'll be developing a new CRA grant policy. So today as policymakers, really seeing some of the decisions and discussion that you all want, and we will package that into a CRA grant policy that we'll bring back. Outreach and promotion, we have our outreach team developing really cool flyers and brochures, and also planning some community pop-up events so we can educate on our grants and also sign people up right then and there. So outreach is definitely a priority. And then like I said, performance reporting. So we'll start to develop a business metrics dashboard that the board will get. You'll know how many inquiries we're getting, how many grants have been awarded, how much funds have been spent, and it'll be really exciting to see us hit our benchmarks as we go. And building team environment, encouraging creativity and innovation along the way. When we hit our goals, we'll celebrate as a team and really push each other to meet those fiscal year goals. Okay, so these next two slides is really the meat and the potatoes of the presentation. So the previous CRA grants, we had 11. I'll go through them. Facade improvement / historical preservation grant, a community redevelopment area fencing grant, a business enhancement micro grant, a neighborhood amenity incentive grant, a tenant ready grant. I'm sorry, that should be another one, vanilla shell grant, a restaurant and food services grant, pre-development level 1 and level 2 grants, community infrastructure needs grant, neighborhood group special projects grant, and a standalone grant, aka a general capital grant. So in order for someone to see if they applied, they'd have to go through all of these, which is really cumbersome. But what we've done is widen the scope. So what that means is that these grants are now eligible requirements within the consolidated 4 grant programs. So I know we want our grant programs to be targeted and specific, but if you're doing a site improvement grant, you can add fencing to that, and we can just widen the scope and have less grants for people to have to navigate. So that's our recommendation, is to consolidate them into these 4 grants, and they're color-coded of which grants are being consolidated where. So what we're presenting to you today is a facade and site improvement grant. This is for the exterior of any commercial building. The second one is an interior grant, commercial interior grant for area redevelopment, also being acronymed as CIGAR. And the staff had a naming contest and had fun with this, but we're open to names. We're like worried about the content and technicality. And then pre-development grant, so we have the level 1 and 2, we're remaining to keep that. And then we've also developed a special projects grant for one that might not fit in here, but that the board can consider. So my mind works in a business framework and business model. So when I was reviewing the motions from the boards to do these different things, wanted to put it into a framework. So the framework is broken out into 4 different levels, and the less funding that someone applies for, the less restrictions are there. As the funding ramps up, of course, we have to have more restrictions and skin in the game for those public dollars. So we've broken out into 4 different levels, which is really the bulk of the discussion today. So level 1 is $25,000 and under, keeping that micro grant administrative approval, which means that CRA staff can review, approve, and monitor and execute. So we're removing the requirement for a grant agreement, and the award letter will be the legally binding document that will say, congratulations, we're excited to work with you on your project, you've received this amount of funding, you have until this date to pull permits, until this date to complete the project, here is your grant manager, and we'll be in touch with you soon to go over your requirements. So the processing timeline for this at most would be 30 days to where we can meet with them, receive an application, process it, approve it, and get them out the door quickly. Level 2 is very similar. This is the $25,000 to $150,000 threshold, still asking for CRA staff approval. Since it is more funding, having an award letter and a grant agreement to go with it, and a 5-year restrictive covenant that is basically a loan that's forgiven over time. This is still short processing, 30 to 45 business days, and essentially what I'm presenting is increasing that micro grant threshold up to $150,000. And the way that we decided that is essentially if you all are in agreement and approve the content of the grant program and say that you believe in this, you're good with the scope, the eligibility requirements, and really the processes of the grant program, then if our staff can verify that everything is in alignment with that, then we can go ahead and issue those grants. So that is level 1 and 2. And then as we move into level 3, we start really ramping it up. This would apply to all special project grant requests and have that 2 to 3 step process. That was one of the motions as well. So it would have a staff recommendation. That staff recommendation would verify the compliance. That was in the back to the basics slide. It would be presented to the CAC. The CAC would make a motion for or against the project. And then once it comes to the CRA board, you'll have all the information on the project, staff's assessment, the community's recommendation, and have all the information to make a decision on that day. Or if you want to hear it again, of course you can. This would come with an award letter, a grant agreement, and building in mandatory reporting. We've been talking about this with some of our larger grants, having some reporting included in the grant language, so we're working through that now. It'd have a 5-year restrictive covenant, and the processing timeline would be a little bit longer because we have to get placed on the agenda, be heard by the community, and of course, come before you as a board. And so that is level 3. And then level 4 addresses the motion to possibly require a rule for RFPs for any project over $1 million, which we can do if the board would like that. This has all of the same requirements: award letter, grant agreement, reporting, 5-year restrictive covenant, and then the RFP process takes a little bit longer. We put it out to the community. It could also be a notice of funding availability saying we have X amount of dollars for this specific purpose, and kind of create that competitive market. So this is what we have presented to you today as more of a 4-tiered approach so that we can get some grants out the door faster. And one thing that we'll talk about as we move into questions is that special project grant, if they do apply for something over $1 million, that is where the board may make an exception if they wanted to apply. So this would be like the catch-all for the cultural institution grants that we have, and it would essentially be an exception to that rule.
Okay, can we stop right there?
Of course.
Board Member Director Moody, so we can have a few questions. Board Member Maniscalco, Board Member Miranda.
Thank you very much.
Clendenin, and then Carlson.
So that was a great presentation. I don't know how much longer you have, but in what you presented so far,
I got something
in addressing the rules regarding over $1 million, you just addressed that. Regarding a scoring matrix and application process, I'm just going by what the motions are here. I feel that some folks could feel overwhelmed and not even want to apply because the process is scary or too complicated or too many hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
I think this helps to condense that. The only thing is we have to make sure that we take that message out in the community that there is opportunity and that there's assistance, that there's a specialist, somebody, as you mentioned, somebody will be assigned to the application so they know. The fact that you'll have a checklist before final approval so people don't go, it's like someone sells a house and everything is going great, but the buyer went and bought a new car and got financed, and now, at closing, they have an issue. Bad analogy, but I make a lot of bad analogies. The fact is, we can eliminate that hurdle by walking people through the process and say, okay, you're doing this, now you move to this step, so they can say, closing date or approval date is X, and that will happen. You think about these numbers, 25,000, $1 million, 150, whatever it is, beyond, we have facade grants, we have other things. These are life-changing grants. 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, whatever, might seem insignificant but really it's not. I mean, it could help people, help them, help catapult them or their business into the next step, you know, get over that speed bump that they need for success. I think in regards to what state law says, what CRAs are supposed to be, this is exactly what we should be doing. This is exactly what we should be doing to not only ease the process, but to fight the battle in eliminating blight and creating opportunity and giving a hand up, not a hand out. I mean, I think this is very impressive. I know it's a team effort. I don't know who, whatever, maybe it's the whole team, but whoever put this together and created this, I think it's very impressive. And I think it answers, you know, I'm looking at the motions, and the only one thing is a 2 to 3 step process for approval of projects exceeding 500,000. We have level 3 at 150 to 1 million, where that 500 plus would fit in. It said 2 to 3 step process, and I think, yeah, I mean, you meet that, you know, staff recommendation, CRA board approval, a restrictive covenant, whatever. Anyways, you're simplifying the process, and that's the whole point. But very good presentation. I'm very happy with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Carlson comes in and heard that. Oh, you changed your.
No, when they finish. No, I'm just listening. I wasn't ready.
Okay.
I wasn't
I
prepared,
see,
Chairman.
see.
I was just thinking.
No problem.
Yeah, as I told you in your briefing, I think that your presentation and the one before you are both excellent. It shows a high degree of professionalism, strategy, insights. The one thing I asked Erica to add to the beginning of this, but it was too late because it was already published, is I think we ought to preface anything like this by having the strategy slides at the beginning, like the mission and the overall goals and things, because that is a game changer for economic development in the Tampa and the region. It has some really good stuff that was built with this board by consent or by consensus. So anyway, thank you all for doing that. In terms of the categories, I don't know if we can go back a couple slides, but in terms of the categories you created, and I told Eric all this offline, but I just want to repeat it so my colleagues can see, because of sunshine, we can't talk to each other outside these meetings. I've always objected to the term facade. It makes it sound superficial. I think even investing in the facade versus investing in something else that will add value to a building, I think is not a good idea. Most of the time I vote against facade grants. If we're going to create an umbrella category, I think we should just simplify this and say something like exterior improvement or something like that. Because you talked about fences and things.
Yeah.
I just don't want to give people the impression that we're not fixing their roads because we're investing in something that's superficial. and also, it gives us some areas to do it. The other thing, though, is I really recommend that we categorize these in terms of the audiences. I would rather see business, and then the next one might be homeowners / neighborhoods, et cetera, so that people know how to find what they're looking for. Because if you're trying to simplify it, if the first one is mostly business oriented, how's an individual going to know whether they qualify or not? And so I think if we organize it, and I'm not suggesting creating new categories, but just relabel them. The cigar, it sounded like a great team building exercise, and I don't want to hamper that at all. But my colleagues know that I always have an objection to acronyms, and a great example recently is pipes. It was kind of cutesy when it was created 4 or 5 years ago, but now we have a problem because the majority of the money didn't go to pipes. It went to other water infrastructure, and now we have to explain to people that pipes was just a fun name. It didn't mean that we were only going to spend the money on pipes. And certainly we're not going to spend the money on cigars, although I love the Newmans and I love smoking cigars in Ybor. But
good save.
But it sounds like we should do more of the internal team building stuff. I wish we could create a name there that if it mostly deals with homeowners and neighborhoods, I wish we could put that. Also in the communication, we want people to know that we're helping businesses and homeowners and neighborhoods. The thing about RFPs, absolutely over $1 million, I think we should hold an RFP. You mentioned a slight nuance on it that might mean we could take it in a different route where we would ask for bids. But if we're talking about $35,000 to $375,000 per unit for affordable housing, I think we should put money out there and say, we've got money, let's, during a certain set period of time, which has to be enough time for people to adequately respond, so it doesn't look like it's fixed for one developer. We ask people to pitch. We should not be reactive to whatever developer walks in our door. And so an RFP allows it to be competitive. It allows the smaller groups like Habitat and CDC and others to qualify. The other thing which I said earlier is that we need very tight definitions. Although we created umbrella areas here, I think we need really tight definitions so that people understand when they don't qualify, because that will save staff time. And then added to that, the staff has to be empowered to say no. I think in whatever way we can describe it, and we can do a board vote if my colleagues agree, but I think we need to empower you all to say no, because I know sometimes people come to you and they feel frustrated that you're saying no and they feel like they should jump over you and go to the board. We should make an emphatic vote to say, we're trusting you to not show us the bids that don't qualify. And so if there's some way we can do that, I would like to do it. And you talked about measuring outcomes, and you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, but we need to measure the output and we need to measure the outcomes. To the extent we can go down to a neighborhood level to look at economic change, we should be doing that. Thank you.
Yes. Board Member Clendenin.
So I'm glad we've landed on this screen, because last time I pulled out a card, I got in trouble for criticizing a color, but I'm gonna pull out my PowerPoint card and say, don't use yellow.
You don't like yellow?
Don't use yellow on that.
It's
I'm sitting here
green.
trying to describe, I'm looking at this going, I can't read that.
It's lime green.
It's lime green, okay, I like lime green, but not on a PowerPoint. Hey, I think this is, honestly, you and your staff director have done a tremendous job. This is so professional, so in line with what a government agency should be doing with their time and our resources. It is absolutely in line with the priorities of, I believe, the CRA and the community input that we've received, and when I say community input, criticism. So you've really nailed and addressed some of the problems that we've had. I can't tell you how impressed I am with how well thought through this is, and I'm very hopeful that this is going to go a long way to improving bureaucracy and streamlining government, and what most people expect and hope out of government. So congratulations, good job. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. This is stellar. Your grants department has just done an amazing job pulling all this together. And I do want to mention that this is simply business grant programs. So residential grants are going to be under a whole different thing coming to us. So, and what I like most about this is you did answer all of the motions and made a very cohesive, understandable package. But again, the thing I like most about it is you're expanding these offerings then to all of the CRAs.
That's right.
So the CACs don't have to recreate the wheel. So some of these smaller CRAs that don't have the experience or aren't aware of the types of things they can be doing, this automatically opens up a whole new world for the folks in those CRAs. So I think that by really combining this to simply a grants team and not individual CRAs was a really brilliant overall thought, and I really like the way this is done. To go back to the facade question, I've had a lot of folks that do ask me, does that mean I can fix a roof? Or, and that's a really good question. I don't know, because for me, the facade is the front, but I know that's not necessarily the case. So those types of questions. And another thing that ties with, and this kind of goes with the residential, but are also important for businesses. So yes, could a business fix a roof with that, of a business that they own? But what about folks who are just renting space? What kinds of things could they do? Because I know right now we're working on a residential grant that might allow renters to encourage their landlords to do some of this. And so how can we sort of is that in here? And if not, can we expand it? So yes, I see Mr. Massey nodding his head. So good. Well, but that's the kind of stuff that when you do the outreach would be great to hear, because I did not know about that until he just nodded his head. So that's fabulous to hear, and that's broadening it to even a much wider range of folks, because most people who are starting a business do not own their own space. So
What did you say?
I said most people who are starting their business do not own their own space. They have to rent. But I don't want them to think that they can't apply for any of these things. So again, maybe even doing a outreach to say, oh, hey, you know, you started a small business, you're renting, these are the types of programs that we can help you with. Or, you know,
because these programs lead to actual changes to the buildings themselves. We are going to require, if you're a tenant, the owner to consent to it, because especially if it comes with restrictive covenants, that affects the title to the property. So we
of course.
But this program has been set up to allow tenants that are not just a 6-month tenant. I think they need to have a little longer term, but business tenants to also apply. So.
Well, but that's the exact same thing for a residential tenant. We would never just put money into a residential unit without getting the approval from the landlord. But again, it also gives the landlord just something that they would never have considered. So I just think it's a wonderful idea. I'm really loving the way this all comes together. Really looking forward, and I really hope that you will share with us your outreach so that we can then share it further. I would really love to do that. Again, this is just stellar, and we spoke about this in our pre-meeting, and I just think it's wonderful.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your report and your effort to make change a little quicker and a little better for everyone. I would imagine that this will enhance the opportunities for those that are looking for something to make it more palatable and easier to obtain. And just for the public's interest, I think every facade is a 50-50 grant. They put up 50 and your division puts up the other 50. And in going along those lines, and I'm not asking for an answer today, but I don't know have any or one or two or none have ever come back to say, we can't make it, we can't, we use the money, we're up, and we can't. I don't know if it's 100% correct that everybody's done what they said they were going to do. I think the public's entitled to say to realize that that's happened. And if it has, I would imagine it's a very small amount. But thank you, and thank your staff. And this, to me, looks like it's going to be a lot of multitasking from somebody in the organization, or many in the organization, to make sure that it's completed in a timely manner. But thank you very much, you and your staff. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Director Moody, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you to this team. I know you all worked really hard on this, and that is evident. This is also actually the colors of the actual marketing for the CRA, so that's why that color was there. Probably doesn't have to be used in a presentation for the yellowing, but go back to the pyramid slide right there, and I think just land there for me to make a few comments. Marketing and outreach, definitely important. I feel, just even based on public comment today, the diversity of the CACs and who gets to be a part of this grant process is not just isolated to a particular area, so that communication has to be very clear. Also, one of the things that's important to me, just from paying attention to the community and hearing what's out there, we are the front line of the grants program. And a business does not have to have help from anyone else. The top of the checklist is the city of Tampa. Is that correct? You know, yes, right?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. There is no fee-based organizations out there that need to assist in the grant process. I want to put that on record and say that, so when I'm out in the community, I can tell them to reference to the comments on this and hearing me say it on the dais, because I think that there are organizations that's misrepresenting what we do when it comes to grants. We are the grant administrator. So and I did notice when you were presenting, you changed the word facade to exterior, which is helpful. I agree. I think that'll be a nice change in helping us understand, or even the public understanding, that we offer it. As far as level 1 and level 2, because it's administrative approval, How we know about that may be something that you take into consideration in sharing that with us in a memo or a congratulations letter, the award letter. We should be copied on that so that we can say congratulations to those businesses as well if we want to. And we know that it's actually happening, although it doesn't require board member approval when it's awarded. That's, I think, a very important point. And then the higher level RFP, I know we talked about this in staff. Sometimes our larger grants that are at a level 4, will there be situations where it won't require an RFP?
Correct.
Okay, we're calling it special, something like that. Can you address that for the board?
Yes, ma'am. So one of the directives is we've been doing like standalone grants for grants that don't fit within a process. So one of the directives from the board was to create a standardized process for any grant that's not within, exterior, interior, pre-development. So that would be considered a special projects grant, and those would have the 2 to 3 step process and empower us to say no if it doesn't get past the staff recommendation, if the CAC doesn't support it. It wouldn't come to you. But if it does pass all of the checks, then it would come to you as a CRA board through every special project grant.
And let me just say something about staff saying no. The way that we're trying to set up the grants, especially the exterior grant or the facade site grant and the cigar grant and the pre-development grants, is to have very clear criteria that staff applies. And so this is all going to be done basically at a staff level. It will not come to the board unless an applicant believes that the staff has misapplied the criteria. And then we would build in, I believe, an appeal process to you all. The special projects are a little bit harder. I think we'll have criteria there, but it's hard to compare apples to oranges when you're talking about special projects. So, I mean, the whole idea, and one of the reasons why the whole special project grant process will take much longer than the standardized grant process is that it will require a staff review recommendation. So staff will score and give a recommendation whether they think it complies with the statute, the plan, and the directives of this board, and is something worthy of CRA funding. But it would then also go to the CAC for their review and recommendation, and ultimately, I think, come to you all for a final decision. Because really, again, these are special projects are things that don't fit into any need category.
Like Union Station.
Correct.
Is that an
Correct.
example?
Union Station would be an example.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome. We have more.
Yes, I know.
And then if I can just recap from some of the comments that I heard.
Okay.
So great discussion. I heard that you all will want to be aware of the grant awards that are going out. So we can, Councilwoman Hurtak.
Along that line, I think it's a great idea, but I'm hoping that there are so many grants that maybe a monthly
It's
list.
exactly what I was just gonna say.
Because otherwise it'll be hard to maintain it, but like a monthly list, and that way we can know. And what I would like is a monthly list under these levels, also though in each category. So whether you do the color, however you want to do it, but just so we know.
Well, 1 and 3, level 3 and up, we're gonna know about.
Well, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. So
1 and 2.
So 1 and 2, but then under each, like how many are we getting? And I mean, I hate
You think
to
it'll
ask-
be a lot?
Well, I'm hoping
No,
it will.
I love it.
And then,
yes.
by which CRAs are getting them. So I hate to ask for like a whole spreadsheet, but I really think that that's going to be valuable, because if a certain CRA isn't doing it, if you already have a plan, then
We
yay,
do. I
you
know
can
you're
just
getting
show
us
your
excited.
plan.
Sure. Ms. Reed will come up and speak on that. That is something that we're working on right now.
Yes, I want to hear from you anyway.
So we do have steps that we've implemented. We've already actually drafted the document. I don't have it today, but it's kind of set up to where it lists each district, and then it will list the grants, and every month that will be included with or provided to the CRA managers. So they would update the CRA or the CACs, and then that would also be a part of Director Moody's director's report on a quarterly basis. So you will be able to see which grants are actually initiated and it'll note these are in progress. And then once the grant is completed, it'll still be on the next report with a strike through so that you are aware this grant has been completed and won't be on the next report. So we do have that in place.
Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome. And Ms. Reed created the universal application, the monitoring checklist, and also wrote all of the grant programs before you today. So thank you so much for your feedback. It's not too much when you're telling us what you want. We actually like that because it makes the expectation clear, so then we can deliver accordingly. So thank you for your comments. And also I heard, wanting to know the award letter. We can definitely add the board as a CC on those award letters. The programs, we talked about renters and outreach. So we have these programs that kind of have a wide scope, but we can do more targeted marketing and saying, is your fence falling down and do you need a new fence? And kind of pluck out some of the key things from each grant and do more targeted marketing. And then if they need more additional things done, then we can help them out in a greater way. I heard some updating on the names, maybe making them more simple, exterior and interior. As well as the reporting that you would like and the different categories there too. And I will not use yellow again in a presentation. So thank you very much. As you can tell, we love what we do. We're really excited to share all of this with you, and we're even more excited to implement it. So after today, I'll talk about the next steps, and you'll get it all in a final package. We've been working down to the wire, and that's why you'll see draft on the program descriptions, because we wanted to keep our promise and deliver this to you today. There's a little bit more work to do. Attorney Massey, did you want to say anything?
Just that Dee and Eric have done an incredibly great job. I am in the process of editing them. I want to make sure that the criteria is very objective. That's one of my concerns, making this totally a staff level kind of decision so that the process is abundantly clear, that the criteria is very objective, and it spells out really clearly how things work. So there may be some word changes, but really what has been presented to you in substance is all been done by them. They've done a great job of consolidating everything, and that's what's going to be ultimately presented to you. We'll probably come forward with a resolution when we put everything together, plus the whole overarching policies for the grant program, for you all to approve and delegate some of this authority to staff directly. So
in my head, I'm giving you a standing.
Board Member Tay.
And that's what I wanted to say, and Board Member Clendenin mentioned this earlier with the redevelopment plan for downtown. Actually, using these metrics and numbers is standard operating procedures for grants, especially in government grants, because if you have a number, it's very hard to sue. It's very hard. It's very cut and dry. You're like, okay, you either fit this or you don't, and you have a little checkbox, and if you don't make the numbers, then you can try to appeal, but it just makes it a bit easier. And again, it's one of the things that has worked well from a legal perspective. And Morris is nodding Mr. Massey is nodding his head, but it's one of those things that for me in my work in the development world has been critical in government operations folks coming back and saying, well, I didn't get what I needed, and well, you didn't fit the requirements. So anyway, I really love the idea of having that checklist ahead of time, so it's less work for us to do. Everything's done on the back end, and I think that's wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, I think it's kind of apples and oranges. I don't disagree with what you just stated. My concern with what we saw in the downtown was the weights, and there was some arbitrariness to it. So I don't necessarily disagree with having numerical values to certain things, but when we had weights and that just gave me some great concern.
well, when you're dealing with grants, I think it's important to be able to have points or
right, yeah.
way to
I
score
agree.
things.
I agree. Scoring is important.
The plan and the goals, that's a little more difficult, and we do need to talk to the consultant about that, because you do have to have some flexibility. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to mention a couple things. One, I wanted to kind of expand and add to some of our communications plans, just so that you're aware of what we're looking at doing. One, we're looking at doing 4 pop-up workshops, And so we're gonna kind of strategically place them so that at the end, we will have presented in an area where everyone in those districts can access. But in those meetings, we will have an education piece on the front end. And then for those that show up, if they already have a project or they're already looking at doing work, they have the opportunity to sign up. And then we'll use the second half of that workshop to take applications on the spot. And then we'll follow up and be able to schedule their pre-application meeting. And then ahead of those workshops, my grants team will be doing little snippet social media videos, Instagram, Facebook, just kind of throwing in some education piece. But then we also plan to do like a random draw to set the location of the next workshop. So just kind of trying to put a human face and be more personable with the community, and also deliver that education piece and put out the word about the grants. And then also, I just want to emphasize that, you know, this initiative really, if you notice, we haven't really created any new grants. We've just cleaned up what's existing and just trying to make those processes better, implementing steps to just keep things on track.
Awesome. And just one more thing to add is the grants team will be doing outreach as well, but the CRA managers have coined themselves as salesmen and saleswomen. So Mr. Orr came up with this the other day, but you know, they're really out here going to be doing more boots on the ground, community redevelopment work. I heard during public comment, you know, asking if staff will be going into businesses, but yeah, we'll be going there, and we don't expect people to come to us. And also with the relocation, you know, we have a fleet here to where we can get a car, and they're going to be in the community walking around, meeting neighbors, meeting business owners, and really selling our programs and really shifting to more community engagement focus. So that's all part of the restructure as well. All right. Well, I have a really great slide next to discuss with you. This was more of the policy setting, and we wanted to test out a new idea and get your feedback on. I'll do a grand reveal. But the question has been, you know, how can we make sure that we're investing in residents and taking care of our own residents and business owners that have lived in this community, and you know that they're getting able to access this grant, and it's not just about new people coming in. Of course, private development and private developers are going to be attracted to an area that's being redeveloped, but how can we take care of the residents that have lived, worked, or owned here for several years? So going into the next slide, we have created something called a legacy credit that we would like to discuss and present with you today. And I haven't seen this before, so we're creating it right now. And essentially, if a business owner can show that they have worked in the community and owned that business at that location for 5, for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we can reduce that match requirement. So part of the public comment as well is, the financial burden and making sure that we're not creating, a hard time to access the capital for business owners to be able to improve their location. So this would essentially mean that legacy owners may qualify for additional relief on their required match, and a percentage of their match will be determined by the number of years they've owned the property and paid property taxes into their district. This would max out at a maximum of $100,000. And if they have lived in the district for 5 years, their match would go from 50% to 35%. If they've lived in or if they've had that business for 10 years, their match would go from 50 to 25. 15 years, it'd go down to 15% match. And 20 years, essentially, we would remove the matching requirement for them. And I know that there's a lot of business owners that have lived and worked and owned their business in the community for a long time. So we're really excited to discuss this with the board to reduce that matching requirement for legacy residents.
Board Member Hurtak. Thank you. This is a great idea, but my only concern about it is the word own. Because again, you can be a business who's been in the neighborhood for 5 years or 10 years and still be a tenant. So that's the part that I'm concerned about, is that I don't want to narrow the requirement or the scope. So I don't know how that would look, but I would like you to look into that. But I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that we're able to reach the maximum number of people with this.
Board Member Clendenin, Board Member Maniscalco.
Thank you, Director Moody. My goodness, I think I've been stating this since before I got elected and since I've got elected, is that as a city of Tampa, we need to be taking care of our own first. And everything that we do, we need to think about the people that live in the city of Tampa, people that work that own businesses in the city of Tampa, everybody that's been investing in the city of Tampa, 1, 2, 3 generations. This is absolutely, we need to clone this. It's brilliant. We need to replicate this in every policy we have in the city. Take care of our own first. And I like this a lot. I mean, this is what we should be doing. Thank you so much for bringing this forward.
I agree. I think this is great, and I also agree with my colleague regarding owned property. For example, there was a story of a business that was a tenant for almost 60 years, and then they finally got the opportunity to buy the building. It wasn't here in Tampa, but yeah, I think it should be in business, not owned property, because again, there's people that, I mean, I could tell you, I could go down the list, of people that have been in business for years, but they rent. So it should be, proof of a lease, something saying, we've been tenants since 1990 or whatever it is. And then just be eligible from there. Because, I mean, I'm trying to think. I have friends that they own their building. And I know other people that they rent. They're just tenants, and the property owner. I mean, my dad, he's been in business there 12 years outside of a CRA, but he rents, and he may never be able to buy the building. So, again, thank you.
Thank you. I believe Ms. Reed has a couple clarifying comments around legacy too. So this is something that we're further refining as well.
Okay. Board Member Carlson.
I need to excuse myself to go to a meeting. I'll see you guys later.
Okay, we're almost there. Did you want to, just a couple clarifying comments on legacy?
Just to clarify a little bit around the legacy credit. So I want to emphasize that the legacy credit is not necessarily meant for everyone. It is meant to incentivize those individuals that have invested in that district and who have been there for years. And so if you have a business in which, though we're allowing the businesses as a tenant to apply for the grant, if they've been there for this, these certain number of years, 5, 10, 15, 20, they're certainly able to have the owner apply for that legacy credit. So even though they're applying for the grant, if they've been in place and the owner has been in ownership of that building and they have paid into the taxes, they can still benefit from that legacy credit. And I do want to clarify or make sure that it's understood that that match is still capped based on the amount of taxes that they have paid into the tax base. Okay.
Thank you.
But these would be for, just let me clarify that, these are for the standard programs though, right? Correct? For the exterior facade grant program or for the interior cigar grant program, is that correct?
So the intent is that it would automatically, so it would automatically as long as they qualify, it would automatically come into place with the standard grants. But being that the special projects grant comes to the board as well, it does not prohibit that from being a part of that discussion.
And I hear what you're saying, and I think the whole idea behind the special project grant is none of the standard rules apply, so we could, I think the board has a lot more flexibility when it comes to the special project grants. The legacy grant to me is more meaningful in the standard grant where the match is required, and special projects I don't think we're going to mandate a match per se automatically because it's what doesn't fit into a specific program. It's when we require a match, I think is where the legacy would come into play. And so we would require in most of these cases, especially if there's going to be changes made to a building, the owner to consent to the application anyway. So the owner would have to go ahead and agree that, yes, they meet the requirements for the legacy program. We understand that. And so I think that we can wrap all that in fairly simply into your whole grant paradigm that you've set up. So that's my thought anyway.
Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, I concur with council's advice on that. I think you should carve out the special grants and let them be standalone and leave the rest for everything else. I think that was good input.
Great, that's helpful. Awesome. Well, thank you to everyone who has been a part of this process. Like I said, we're almost to the finish line with it, and we'll start to wrap up the presentation. Attorney Massey.
Are you done with the grant presentation?
I'm just going to go over some of the requested changes that maybe the board would make some motions around.
Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So essentially, we're saying get rid of the old and welcome the new. So I'd be asking the board to sunset this previous CRA commercial grants, which was the 10 to 11 that was presented earlier, and then to adopt the revised streamlined grant programs. Like I said, they're in draft condition, and then Attorney Massey will prepare that with a resolution to come for official adoption. If you like the tiered funding framework, you can adopt that as well, and we'll turn that into a CRA grant policy, as well as the universal grant application that's part of the packet.
Can we do all of this at once, or would you like me to do sunsetting and then adopting?
Can we do it all at once, Attorney Massey?
I think you could make a single motion
Okay.
endorsing the recommendations that.
Okay, I will make the motion to accept the recommendations and look forward to it coming back.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Board Member Hurtak and seconded by Board Member Clendenin. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries for you to proceed with the recommendations.
Thank you so much.
You have the most popular program ever presented in the CRA now.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, I did skip a slide because I got excited. But the next steps, what we'll do is package the new programs for you, formalize the policy, develop the flyers, and of course share them with you so you can get them out into your districts, present that communications plan, and then also the monitoring tool and success indicators, all of which we've talked about.
Just want to say how much I appreciate you using action verbs.
Thank you.
You know, it really matters, and so. No, this is my editor. This is my NGO work. It's